All right, what's up, everybody? This is going to be a conversation with a person on G Plus by the name of Alexia Richardson. How this conversation came about is I was in a True Empiricism's hangout, and we were talking about the LGBT agenda, and he said on the video that I didn't know yes, or I shouldn't speak on things I don't know about. So what I decided to do is allow him to hang out. So once I find his name here, I'm going to add him into the hangout, which I cannot seem to find his name anywhere. He's in my circles. Hold on a second. How in the world is he not coming up? Um, Here's what I'll do. Let's see, I'm getting some messages. Here's what I'll do. I'll send him the direct hangout link in the conversation we were having, and just wait for him to show up. Okay, let's see here. Copy and paste this link here. Hmm. Okay, so I just sent them the link, and he should be coming in a few. Like you said, you had your issues with them, Carlos.
Yes, in the past, I wasn't a hangout with him and True before, and they were talking, and he started cursing and stuff like that. So I muted him, simply for cursing, not because I disagree with what he believes and whatnot. Um, honestly, I don't have a problem with his belief systems. You can feel free to believe what you want to believe. Not all atheists act like that. There's some very intelligent, civil, moral atheists here online that can have a civil dialogue. Um, but yeah, that was just my point. So I just hope that this conversation that we have now can be civil, um, and
Yeah,
rational,
we'll
instead
see.
of yeah.
How's it going, Alexia? You said that I didn't know what I was talking about. Could you expand on more as to why?
You're going to hear a lot of background noise coming from writing in there.
There's a
Just,
lot of
so you,
feedback going on.
yeah, I know that's what I just said.
Oh, okay. I couldn't hear you very clearly.
Now, what was your question?
Yeah. So I didn't know what I was talking about according to what you said in the little text exchange we had. Could you explain why?
Is in regards to your explanation of what you think atheism is and holding a position, and etc.
I wasn't aware I was talking about atheism and true empiricism's hangout. I thought you was talking about true empiricism's hangout when we were discussing the issue of the transgender thing with the bathrooms.
Well, there's that, but that's a separate issue. When I made that comment, it was at the start of the video where you said essentially that how can you hold a position on something you don't believe in?
Well, what I said was if you're going to claim that you merely lack a belief, then you have like no basis to say anything.
How
Do you
does
think
that at all
athe-
logically follow?
Well, let me explain. Do you think atheism is a lack of belief in God?
That is exactly what it is, and that is the only thing it is.
Okay. When you say atheism is the lack of belief, what you're saying is atheism is the lack of or not something else. Atheism is not theism. That's what you are saying.
No,
So you're saying, go
atheism
ahead.
comes from the Latin word "a," which means without. Atheism is literally without belief in a God. Theism is a belief in a God. Atheism is a lack of belief in a God.
Well, yeah, I'm aware of the A and the theos, and I'm aware of all that, but that has nothing to do. I mean, I understand the language there, but that has nothing to do with the fact that it is in itself a lack of, because something that is not something else does not define what it is. Like, for example, if I were to tell you, if you were to ask me what my name is, and I were to say not Steve or not Tim or not Jonathan, I'm not telling you what my name is.
And see, that's apples and oranges. You're trying to compare somebody asking you a direct question and you giving a different answer to having a position on a particular subject. So if I asked you, is your name Steve? And you said no, that's what atheism is. Instead, what you're trying to equate it to is your name Steve? Maybe. That's just not what it is.
No, but I'm asking you, what is atheism? When you say atheism is a lack of, you're not saying it is anything. A lack of is not anything that is.
Are you an unicornist? Do you believe
What's
in
that?
unicorns?
What's that?
Do you believe in unicorns?
I believe they do not exist. That is
Okay.
not a lack of a belief. It's a positive belief that they do not exist.
Do you have a belief in unicorns?
No,
Okay, so you are an unicornist. Same thing.
I have the positive belief that they do not exist. The fact that I don't believe in them does not define my belief. I have a positive belief that they do not exist. Me not believing in them is not what makes a unicornism what it is. What makes it what it is my positive belief that they do not exist. Merely lacking belief does not say anything about a unicornism.
Actually, by definition, unicornism would be the lack of belief in unicorns, just as atheism is a lack of belief in God. It does not tell you anything else about the person. It doesn't tell you any of their positions. It literally, that's what the word means: is you do not have a belief in
But
God. Now,
all
if you want to talk about my position, which I am an anti-theist, and I also know that there's no God, there's a difference.
but all a unicornism, as you defined it, is saying that this is not this. Or if we're talking about atheism, all you saying is atheism is not theism. Atheism is the lack of theism.
That's
Translation,
exactly what
atheism is
atheism.
not theism.
That's exactly what it is. It's a lack of theism. There's
But
nothing more to it. There doesn't need to be anything else to it.
right, but there's lots of things that atheism is not. Like, for example, atheism is not dog crap, but not being dog crap does not define what atheism is.
You're trying to make the word mean more than it does. It literally just means what I said. It's a lack of belief in God. It doesn't tell you anything else. It doesn't tell you whether I believe dogs exist. It doesn't tell you what color I like the best. All it is a position on one statement. That is the belief in a God. There's nothing else to it.
No, you're reducing it to a mere psychological state of affairs. If atheism is not theism, then atheism is not a lot of things, okay? You cannot say atheism not being theism defines what atheism is, any more than atheism not being the dog crap defines what atheism is.
As I said, you're trying to take it past what it is. It's like trying to say,
But you're
well,
not
theism
saying-
is a belief in a God, so therefore, it doesn't tell you anything else about the person. They believe in a God. You're trying to make it mean more than it is, and you're wrong. It's not a religion. It's not a belief system per se. It is a lack of belief in
But you're
one
not
particular
telling me
subject.
what it is, sir. You're not telling me what it is, so you're only saying what it's not. It's not anything
That is what it is.
No, it's not. Saying that X equals not X is illogical.
No, it's
X equals X, sir. X does not equal not X. Okay, that's illogical.
anyways. Is there something else you want to talk about? Because I've already explained to you how you're wrong in this particular subject.
No, what you're doing is you are saying a positive attribute, or you're saying a negative attribute, or the lack of something equals something that is. Like X equals not X. By definition, that is illogical.
That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying
Yes, it
atheism
is.
is a lack of belief in a God. That is all it is. That's all it's ever going to be, and it doesn't matter how much you try to make it mean something else. It's not going to mean anything else. I'm sorry, you don't understand the subject.
You're saying X. What atheism?
No, I'm saying
X is atheism, right? And not theism is what you said it is. Translation: X equals not X.
To use your example, theism is X. Atheism is minus X.
Say what?
To use your example, theism would be X plus Y equals this. Atheism is minus X, therefore Y equals this.
That's just like saying that theism is the lack of belief that God does not exist.
No, theism is the belief that there is a God. Atheism is the lack of belief that there is a God.
No, but that would be just like me twisting theism by the lack of something, like saying that
No,
theism
not
is
at all.
the
You would
lack
have
of
to-
belief that God exists.
You would have to add the A, and it would become a completely different word meaning a completely different thing.
No, you don't have to add an A, sir. Is theism atheism or not?
Theism is a belief in a God, plain and simple. If somebody says I'm a theist, it tells you nothing else about them. Just
Okay,
as
if
somebody
I'm
says I'm an atheist, it means that they do not hold a belief in a God, and that is all it tells you. It does not tell you anything else, and you're trying to make it mean something else when it does not.
but me being a theist means I necessarily lack the belief that God does not exist.
What?
If I'm a theist, I necessarily have to lack the belief that God does not exist in order to be a
You're
theist.
using a double negative there, sir. I suggest you study English.
No, it's not a double negative.
You lack that something doesn't exist.
Well,
That is
let
a
me
double negative.
double negative. I'll explain to you why it's not double negative. When you take the positive statement, I believe X does not exist. That's a positive statement of the non-existence of something. Lacking the positive state is not a double negative.
It actually is. You're saying two negatives.
No, it's
you
not.
lack something, and that there is no.
No,
The double negative makes it positive. It is
Isn't-
exactly what theism
isn't
is.
it-
You
no.
have a belief that there is a God.
No, the belief that God does not exist is a positive statement. Therefore, negating a positive statement is not a double negative.
Hold on. All right. Anyways, we're not going to agree on the subject. I'm sorry. From what I understand, you haven't been in this community very long. Um, Eventually, you will learn what words actually mean what, and trying to apply something else to them is
Well, I'm not a spring chicken to this discussion, sir. Look, we got to take the positive statement. I believe X does not exist. That's a positive statement on the non-existence of something. If I lack that positive statement, that's not a double negative.
no. What you're trying to say. Theism is that you lack the belief that no God exists. It's a
No,
double negative.
I lack the
That's exactly what you just said.
No, I said I like the positive belief that God does not exist. That's not a double
And that's
negative.
exactly what theism is. You're trying to make it more.
It's
Is there anything else you want to discuss? Because this isn't going to get anywhere. I'm sorry, you are incorrect.
No, it's negating the belief that God does not exist. That's not a double negative. Negating a positive belief by necessity is not a double negative.
Were you born in America?
Yes.
You should get a refund on your education. I'm sorry. But
Is that you kind of poisoning the well, sir?
no, I'm just saying that you don't understand the English language.
Well, we're talking about positive statements, okay? There is a positive statement of the belief that God does not that God exists. That's a positive statement. We can both agree on that. Then there is the positive statement that God does not
My
exist.
comment was...
So if we take the positive statement that God does not exist, I believe that God does not exist, negating a positive statement cannot be a double negative.
Anyway, my comment in regards to calling you stupid is when you said that just because if somebody's an atheist, just because I don't believe Voldemort does not exist does not mean I cannot hold a position on Harry Potter. And anyways, and if you want to talk about something else, we can, but we're not going to get anywhere on this because you're not understanding the terms that are being used.
Well, let's stick to the point here, because look, if I were to do what you're doing for atheism, for theism, all I would have to say is theism is the lack of the positive belief that God does not exist. I lack a belief that God does not exist. That's all I would have to do for theism to play the same games.
No, you're trying, like I said, you're trying to change words. Now, we can either go on to another subject or
No, I'm not changing words.
Because you're wasting my time here.
How is lacking the positive belief that God does not exist changing words?
As I said, is there another subject you want to talk on, or am I just wasting my time?
No, you wanna try to get out of dealing with the problem with your logic. That's what you're doing, and I'm not going to let you get away with that.
I'm not trying to get out of my problem with my logic. I'm sorry that you don't understand what atheism means or what theism means. You're trying to change their meanings. You're trying to play this bullshit game, and I'm sorry, you are just incorrect.
No, if I were to tell you that I lack the positive belief that God exists, I can flip theism to mean that the lack of belief that God does not exist.
If you lack a belief, aka lack, that is a negative. That's number one. That God does not exist. That is negative number two. Two negatives equals a positive. There's a reason why you don't say, I don't not want to do this. It doesn't make sense. You might as well just say, I want to do this. You're making a logical contradiction there, sir.
No, there is no contradiction because you're dealing with a positive claim. I do not believe God exists. That is the positive claim of the non-existence of something. Lacking that positive claim is not a double negative.
Anyways, are you going to be doing this hangout for a while? Because I'm going to be going into a warehouse where I have... I'm going into a warehouse where I have no internet connection. I will rejoin your call in about 20 minutes, and we can try to continue the conversation.
Sure, I'll be here for a bit.
Bye.
See ya. Thanks for coming by, man. Mm.
All right, so I mean, I think for the most part, you did a pretty good job explaining yourself, but um, I don't think he understands the point that you're trying to make.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a spring
I think you
chicken
have
to
to
the
make it a bit more
subject.
clearer for him. Um,
I don't know how much more clear I could have made it.
but,
If I look, there are two positive claims. One, belief that God exists. Two, belief that God does not exist.
right.
Hi, Kylie. How you doing?
Hi. I didn't know if anyone was actually going to be in here. I'm actually not at my house. I'm just sitting here on my phone waiting for something. So.
Oh, okay. I was just talking to another atheist about atheism.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're an atheist, right?
I am. Actually, I have to run in somewhere and then I'll be back at my house. So I'm going to drop out for like 10 minutes and then I'll be back if that's cool.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Do what you gotta do.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. But yes, as I was saying, if we're dealing with two positive claims, the first one is the belief that God exists. That's a positive claim. The second one is the belief that God does not exist. There is a belief, a positive belief that God does not exist. Both of those are positive claims. Lacking either of those claims are not double negatives. Just because it's a positive belief in the non-existence of something does not make it a negative.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I positively believe something does not exist. Lacking a positive belief is not a double negative.
So, what you're saying is, the whole atheism tries to define itself as a lack of belief. Ultimately, um, that it is a belief, or it is a positive belief of some sort.
Yes, they try to play this game by trying to atheism from the positive belief that God exists to merely the lack of belief that God exists.
Mm-hmm.
They try to twist it as a lack of something, because if they twist it as a lack of something, then it's merely a psychological state of affairs to where they have no position to try to argue anything. And then they think they can stay in a position to where they don't have to argue or prove anything, and then they just want to kind of stay in their safe space and just attack theism all day. It's really nothing more than a ploy to try to get out their conversation of the burden of proof.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the point you have to make clear. Because I mean, you're making a sound argument, man. But I'm not too sure if he understands what that. What you're trying to show is that what atheism is claiming to be, but actually what it is, and how what it is doesn't necessarily doesn't follow logically. Because yeah, because
Oh,
we know
let
what
me.
we know what he's trying to say, that it's a lack of belief, but it's a ultimately it's what it boils down to is that it's the positive, right? Positive claim that God doesn't exist, but they're just trying to they try not to hold on to that belief because they know that they cannot prove that. Also, basically, they trying to hold that they merely lack a belief, even though that's not sufficient itself.
Yeah, and then he was trying to attack my education. Dude, don't try that poison the well fallacy on me, bro. Don't try that.
Right. No, I think he's I didn't want to say anything. I think he's being really close-minded and not trying to not really understanding your point. I don't know if because he doesn't understand what you're trying to say. I don't know if it's because he's being closed-minded. I don't know if it's a mixture of both. But Yeah, I mean,
And then he tried to move away from the subject. And then, no, we're not moving nowhere. You're gonna deal with the fact that you said something stupid.
right. No, and don't switch it up, man. Keep it that way. Um, because it's an important issue that a lot of atheists um, a lot of atheists make, and that needs to be addressed.
These are what these atheists do. When you catch them in their nonsense, they want to try to they want to try to change the subject to something else. They want to employ all these red herrings and um, these red herrings and these shifting of things. They don't want to deal with the error in their nonsense. That's why he wanted to change the subject. He knew that he was caught in his nonsense. He knew he was done. He knew he had no way to deal with the BS he was saying. So he tried to switch and shift the subject. And I wasn't going to give him the chance to do that. You got to hold these people's feet to the fire. Don't let them shift things on you, because that's how they try to confuse and obfuscate the discussion.
Right, right. So yeah,
Obfuscate to escape.
right,
Obfuscate to escape.
right. Yeah, man. Which is that's unfortunate.
Yep. But I'm not new to this game. I may be fairly new to the G plus community, but I'm not new to dealing with atheists. He
Hmm.
doesn't realize the depth of background I have in refuting this claim. And I actually learned, as I told you a while ago, I actually learned how to deal with that lack of belief nonsense from an atheist.
Right. So you know what? You should bring that point up as well. Also provide the link if he comes back up, um,
Absolutely.
just to make sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, just to kind of point out, you know how atheists are used this lack of belief. But could you say that in a way, what they're trying to say is that they have a positive belief that God doesn't exist, but
Yes, they have the positive belief that God does not exist. Right.
they know that it's fallacious and can't really be proven, so they merely try to say they lack a belief.
But
Um,
they're scared to engage in the arena of ideas and the burden of proof argument. So they try to redefine atheism from the positive belief that God does not exist to merely a lack of belief. Because if they have to take a positive stance, that means that they have a positive claim of the burden of proof they have to back up, because the burden of proof lies upon the one making the positive claim. And they know if they have a positive claim that something does not exist, therefore they will have the burden of proof in the conversation as well. And they're too scared to engage in that burden of proof. And that's why they play these mental gymnastics and games and semantics and whatnot.
right, right. But wouldn't it be easier for them to claim to be an agnostic, or not really?
If they want to be honest about discussion and don't really want to make any claims for or against theism, then absolutely it would be better for them just to be honest and just be agnostics. But here's the thing, they go past agnosticism because they truly do believe there's something wrong with the concept of theism. And since they believe there's something wrong with the concept of theism, they attack it. But they try to attack it while not having to back up anything. That's why they play this game. But what they don't realize is, if you don't have a position to argue from, then you have no basis to attack or defend anything. It's just like saying that I have a 38 caliber gun, but I have no loaded ammo rounds in it. I can't shoot. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
If there's no loaded ammo rounds in it, you can't shoot. You can't fire.
Right.
And that's basically what it is with their position. When you don't have a position, when you don't have anything, you can't freaking address anything or attack anything.
Right. Also earlier in the conversation, he did admit he was anti-theist, which anybody who knows him knows that that's probably the most obvious thing in the history of humanity. Um, but he said that um, I don't. I'm trying to remember exactly what he said word for word. I don't want to misquote him. Hopefully, he comes back to clear it up. But that he believes that God doesn't exist. He can prove that God doesn't exist. So that would be interesting to hear.
Yes, that he just knows God exists, and
Doesn't exist.
which would entail his burden of proof right there. But I didn't want to, you know, get the discussion going in a million different directions. That's why I want to stick to that one point. So I didn't want to, start, getting him to try to sustain his burden of proof for saying that he knows God does not exist. I just want to stay on one discussion, the lack of belief point,
Right.
because you got to understand the pattern in the games these atheists play. You can't let them bait you into their ploys,
Right.
because what most atheists do is lead you down rabbit trails and try to obfuscate and confuse the issue and use certain tactics as a ploy to try to throw you off and then take dominance of the conversation. And if you're not privy to their tricks and their mind games and whatnot, then you can get ran in circles. You may not even realize that what they're saying makes absolutely no sense and they're not actually doing anything logical, but they can get you confused to try to think they got the upper hand. If you don't realize what's going on, then they can try to espouse themselves as the intellectual superior. But if you can see through their tricks and you know what they're doing, then they can't take they can't, espouse themselves as the intellectual superiors. They can't dominate the conversation.
Right.
I seen through his tricks, and he started attacking my education and then trying to change the subject. No, we're not going to do anything. You can say, and then he tried to say that I just didn't understand, right? But that's what they do all the time. You refute their nonsense. It's just, oh, you just don't understand. Well, why don't I understand? Explain why.
Right.
Antonio, can I say something?
What's up, E? Yes.
Alexia was actually kind of right about the claim thing. When you make a claim against something, that's a negative claim. It's only positive if you're claiming for something.
Well, what I was talking about was the claim that something does not exist. Like if I say,
Yeah,
I
that's a
believe,
negative claim.
wait.
Oh,
If
sorry.
I say I believe that something does not exist, that is a positive claim that something does not exist. There are positive claims that something do exist and positive claims that things do not exist. Non-existence of something does not mean it's a negative claim.
Well, that's really what a negative claim is, dude. It has to be, in order for it to be negative, you have to be claiming against it, not for it. You hear me? Antonio, you hear me? Think, hello? Hello?
Sorry about that.
Mm.
Yeah,
What
what I
is-
was saying was just because you're talking about something does not exist does not necessarily make it a negative claim. Because if you're dealing with two claims, like the claim that there's two claims. There can be the positive claim that something does exist, and the positive claim that something does not exist. You're only dealing with whether something does or does not exist. Just because you're talking about something does not exist doesn't necessitate to it being a negative claim. You see what I mean? Positive claim that something exists and the positive claim that something does not exist.
uh, Dude, I really don't get it because that is really what a negative claim is all about. In order for it to be negative, it has to be against it. Like it has to be for the negation of it. Like say, you know, when atheists say God does not exist, that is a negative thing because they're saying God does not exist. It has to be you have to be claiming against the existence, or you have to be claiming that this did not happen in order for it to be a negative claim. It can't be a positive claim unless you're claiming for it. Like we claim that God exists. That's a positive claim.
Well, well, you can have positive claims that something does that didn't happen. Like for example, let's say somebody said that Michael Jackson came to your town, but you have let's say Michael Jackson came to I don't know, Madison Square Garden on today. Let's say Michael Jackson came to Madison Square Garden today,
That's a
and
positive.
yes, and people say, well, no, that did not happen.
That's a negative claim then. It's not there is no positive negative claim. It's only the negative claim. It's a negative claim because the claiming Michael Jackson did not come. That's what makes it negative. That
Well,
it did not come. It can't be
if
positive.
well, look, what I'm
It can't
trying
be.
to say,
Oh, sorry. Go.
what I'm trying to say to you, man, is if you saying I believe that something does not exist, how is that? If you believe that something does not exist, how is that a negative? How is that a negative belief?
Because you
That
don't.
beliefs cannot be negative because that would be a self contradiction. You see what I'm saying? If you believe something, whether something is true or false, that's a positive thing. If you believe something, when you say a negative belief, you're kind of conflicting with the statement itself. It's a self contradiction. So when we talk about the positive belief that something does not exist, that is a positive statement in the non existence of something. Do you know that there are positive claims in the non existence of something? That is a very well established philosophical concept. Did you not know that?
No.
Yes. If you get around too many ignorant atheists or too many YouTube internet infidel people who haven't studied philosophy deeply, then you'll get caught up in nonsense like this, like thinking that the positive affirmation that something does not exist is a negative claim. Philosophically speaking, that's just not true. If you do deeper research and you look into philosophical arguments on things like this, you will find that there's the positive belief that things exist and the positive belief that things do not exist. These are common philosophical concepts and principles. A lot of people ignorantly believe that just because you say something does not exist necessarily means you're making a negative statement. That's not necessarily true. If I believe that something did not happen, that doesn't necessarily make it a negative thing at all. You cannot say, a negative belief, because it's a self-contradiction. You're saying where belief is positive, lack of belief is negative. Now, if I say I lack belief that God exists, then yes, that's a negative thing. If I lack belief that God exists, then yes, that's a negative statement. The positive statement is I believe that God does not exist. The negative statement is I lack belief God exists. Does that make sense?
Uh, I guess.
Yes. Where X is a thing, where X is something, not X is not a thing. X is a thing that exists. Not X is not a thing that exists. There are positive statements and there are negative statements. I believe Santa Claus exists. That's a positive statement. Or I could rephrase it like this. I lack belief that Santa Claus does not exist. That's a negative statement. When you say you lack belief in something, you are making a negative statement. When you saying you believe something, you are making a positive statement. What atheists like to do is they like to adopt only the negative, the lack of belief. And when they try to adopt the negative, that means that they're not making it any, they're trying to adopt a position that allows them to not have to say anything. So basically, they're saying, I'm not making any claims for or against anything since I merely lack something. So if I'm not making any claims for or against something, but I merely lack something, then I have no burden of proof that I have to sustain. Do you see why they do this? It's all about playing games so they won't have to sustain their burden of proof. Does that make sense?
Nah, sorry, I still don't get it.
Well, let me explain it like this. If I have a if I have a positive belief in something, if I'm making a positive claim about something, would that not require the burden of proof? If you're making a positive claim about something, wouldn't that require the burden of proof?
Yeah, it would. It would require you to, present some evidence.
Right. But if you merely lack something, if you're not really saying anything for or against something, but you merely lack something, are you making any positive claims that require a burden of proof? Like, for example, someone who isn't privy to the God conversation would lack belief that God exists, or someone who isn't privy to the God conversation would lack belief, right? So if they're not privy to the conversation and they merely lack belief, is there any burden of proof on their part?
Well, I think it depends on how they act. Like if they lack belief and they're saying that there is no God, then yeah, this is just a negative claim, and and there's a burden of proof with also making a negative claim.
What I'm saying is, if someone is not privy to the God conversation at all, like They don't really have a position on the issue, and they just merely lack belief. I mean, there could be somebody totally new to the discussion. That person who was totally new to the God discussion would lack belief. If you told them, about the concept, and they're not really familiar with the discussion, they would lack belief in the existence of God because they haven't really spoke about the subject. They haven't categorized it or in any way. They don't really know what's going on. So they necessarily lack belief, right?
Wouldn't it just be that they don't know?
Say what?
Wouldn't it just be that they don't know?
Correct. And if you don't know, then you lack belief, right? Like, for
So
example,
this,
babies don't know about the God concept, so babies lack belief, right?
uh, wait. So basically, what Alexia is saying is that he's agnostic.
Well, he's tried to appeal to sort of an agnostic form of weak atheism. Let me tell you the.
Because that's basically what agnosticism is. You don't know.
Well, let me explain to you the game that they play. Have you heard the concepts of strong atheism and weak atheism? Have you heard of those concepts before?
Yeah, I get the idea that strong atheism is the militant ones.
Right. The weak atheists are the ones who merely lack
Well,
belief. The strong atheists are the ones who make the positive claim that God does not exist.
but
So,
even though, but even though that claim that you lack belief, that doesn't really substantiate the position because they lack belief. Then why? Then I don't really understand why they're speaking against it. If they're
right. You see
because
what my
that
point was when I was telling him that if you merely lack belief, then you're not arguing for or against anything, and you have no position to say anything.
you know,
Don't you?
I watched something similar to that. If they're talking against God, then yeah, the position of they denied God that they don't believe in him. That's the position that's more suited to them. Not you don't you like belief.
Right. When you start to talk seriously about the conversation and you start to critique um, the God concept, then you're doing something more than merely lacking belief at that point. If you're constantly attacking the God uh, issue as illogical or messed up, you are engaging in something more than mere lack of belief because you cannot merely lack belief in something yet just attack something else at the same time. Like, for example, I can lack belief that Santa Claus exists, but I cannot say that I lack belief Santa Claus exists, then start attacking every concept of Santa Claus as absurd. Like it
So
makes no sense. This is stupid. There's no way this is logically valid. Okay, and
so you
when I'm going into
say that
that realm, go ahead.
so basically you can't say you're agnostic about Santa Claus, then act like you know he doesn't exist.
Well, if you say you're an agnostic, you're just saying that I can't know either way. It's like affirming a positive position that you can't know or take a position either way. You are taking a position that you can't know one way or the other. So, but that's not what they're doing. They are merely reducing atheism to a mere psychological state of affairs. When you reduce atheism to the merely the lack of, it's just a psychological state of affairs. It has no pragmatic meaning for or against anything. It's just a psychological state of affairs. A baby lacks belief that God exists, okay? But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't explain anything. Why are you talking about you merely lack belief, but you are making statements as if you truly do have a positive statement against said thing that you say that you merely lack belief in? If you merely lack belief in it, then you would not even resort to attacking the God concept. If you merely lack belief, then it would just be that mere lack of belief. You wouldn't start making statements to try to criticize theism. You wouldn't start making statements to try to criticize any kind of deities.
Hey, Antonio, the thing about the baby lacking belief, yeah, I don't think that's an accurate one. It's more like the baby's ignorant of God.
Well, yes, a baby is definitely ignorant. But when I say that a baby lacks belief, what that means is a baby does not have a positive position on the God question, and so
So,
lacking
so,
it in that sense.
so the baby's basically in the neutral is neutral.
Right. The baby lacks belief that God exists, and the baby lacks belief that God does not exist simultaneously.
Uh,
Look at it this way: a baby is a non theist. Babies are put into the category of those which are not theists, but a baby is not an atheist either. A baby is a non theist as well as a non atheist at the same time.
okay.
Right.
Non-theist and an atheist at the same time.
Yes, a non theist and a non atheist at the same time. That's what babies are. They're put into the non category because they don't have a position on atheism or theism. So they're categorized under the category of non atheist as well as non theist. The default position is for the default position for a baby is non-theist as well as non-atheist.
I guess.
Well, I mean that's true because look at it this way: all atheists are non-theists, but not all non-theists are atheists. An atheist will always be a non-theist, but that doesn't mean a non-theist will always be an atheist. An atheist is a non-theist because an atheist believes that God does not exist. But that doesn't mean that because someone is a non-theist that they're an atheist. A baby is a non-theist, yet not an atheist. All atheists are non-theists, but not all non-theists are atheists. Does that make sense?
Right. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, does that make sense? Yes, it's just like this. And an atheist actually told me this. I learned these points that I'm making to you, man, I learned from logical thinking atheist. And he posed a perfect analogy to what I just said. Like, for example, all oak trees are trees, but not all trees are oaks. Just because something is a tree does not make it
an oak tree
Yeah,
any more
I've heard that.
than
I've heard that example
yes,
before. I understand what you mean.
right. So we have to be careful how we categorize things. That's what it comes down to. Welcome back to the room, Alexia.
I don't know how long I'm going to be able to talk. I am working.
Oh, okay. Just talk however long you can, man. What's on your mind?
But anyways, I don't want to get back into that discussion that we were having because it wasn't going anywhere. But you did say something about the transgender bathroom rights, which I
Okay.
did hear as part of the hangout. What did you want to say about that?
All right. Let's talk about it. Well, to start, I'll just give my position on that issue. Um, I do believe that we should make a solution available for people who have legitimate issues to be able to use the bathroom. And I proposed a solution, and the solution to that would be a third bathroom called a unisex bathroom. You have the men's restroom, women's restroom, and then you have your unisex restrooms to allow those who fall into that category to go in there and use the bathroom. You see, a lot of these bathrooms already exist, and I think to resolve this, they should, make it mandatory across the board for any public facility who has restrooms to add a third restroom of a unisex restroom to resolve this whole issue. I have no problem with that. I think that's a viable solution. But what I do not agree with the solution is to make every bathroom just gender neutral because the overwhelming majority of people in society know what their gender is and don't have the same kind of issues that transgender people do. And I think it's a really, really messed up and a disservice to society to change the overwhelming majority of standards to accommodate the
Well, hold on.
0.3% of
Hold on a second. I got a
individuals.
question.
What's up?
How how does one get the idea that they're a different gender than they are now? Like, isn't that what transgender basically is? You think you're a different gender, so you get surgery and then change your body and your private.
Well,
I'm actually uniquely qualified, being that I am transgendered, in answering your question. Um, it's not just something you decide; it's just something that you know who you are and what you are. And gender itself is a societal construct. A good example of this would be there was a child who, due to the barbaric rituals of the Christian cult called circumcision, his penis was botched in that circumcision. And what the doctors decided to do was make him female and have his parents raise him as a female. And throughout his life, he knew he was a male. He did not identify as a female. He was not a female. And he ended up transitioning to male later in his life because it was his innate view of who he was. So it's just a societal construct. And in response to Antonio, there's already a solution that has been working since gender segregated bathrooms have been invented, and that is transgender people use the bathroom of that which they identify. It's what's been happening for decades, if not hundreds of years. And there's never been an issue until recently for no reason.
no, that's
And so,
that's not been
so
happening because if people were legitimately transgender and using bathrooms that they identify with their personal gender identity or whatever, we wouldn't have known it. The reason why it's become an issue is because that they believe that the men's and women's restrooms were not people who have men's and women's restrooms. They think that they were being discriminated against because people had men's and women's restrooms. and they want
Except
to change the standard to try to make all bathrooms gender neutral.
no, that's
How
not
did
what
you?
they're doing. I myself am male to female. I still look male. I use the male restroom. I still sound male, so I use the male restroom. Now, when I start appearing as female and I finish up my transition, I will be using the female restroom as I should be. And that has been going on for decades, and it's never been a problem,
Well,
ever.
what's wrong with you? What's wrong with a third
Wait,
bathroom,
you're
unisex bathrooms? What's wrong with that?
Well, not only is there the cost, but then it kind of outs people. You know, not only do you have to, all these buildings now have to make room for a third restroom for absolutely no reason, but what's already established has been working, and it's because of bigoted Christians who want to try and force their ideology on the society, who want to make this an issue and say, oh, it's about protecting women and children and this and that, except that there has never, ever in history been a case of someone claiming to be transgender to go into the restroom to get a peek, to molest, to assault, which guess what? A law is not going to prevent them from doing that, and it's still illegal.
Well, here's the thing, sir. You don't. Therein lies the problem, though, because you don't know. Because if gender is something that you just merely identify with, if something like that was to happen, then you can just simply deny. You can just simply deny whether.
Gen- Gender dysphoria does not just work. Oh, I wake up one day, I feel female today. That doesn't. That's not how it works.
But
And
that's
also,
what
it's
they're
not me
saying.
denying. It's what the facts are, and there has never been a single reported case of that happening. But guess what? There has been reported cases of priests molesting little kids in the bathroom. But I don't see you saying that priests should have their own bathroom.
Well, here's the thing, man. What what they're saying right now is that if somebody was biologically born a male, all they have to do is identify as a female, then they can go into a women's bathroom. That's what's happening.
And even if that were the case, which it's not, you don't just, like I said, wake up one day and decide you're female. But even if that were the case, what is exactly wrong with that?
But that is
It's
literally
still
what's happening, though,
it's
sir.
it's still illegal to go into a bathroom to get a peek. It's still illegal to rape someone. It's still illegal to assault someone. So what exactly is your issue?
You don't need to change the standards of men's and women's bathrooms to
You're the one
for
that wants to change
transgender
the
people.
standards. You're the
No,
one that
no,
wants
I
to
am.
change
No,
this.
I'm not. I want to leave men's and women's restrooms the way they are. They
Okay,
want to
then this
say
is
that. They want
then
to
this
say
is a
that.
non-issue
No,
because
no,
that's
let
what's
me
been
finish.
happening for all of
Let me
history.
finish.
Go ahead. Hello. Hello. Are you there? Hello.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, sorry about the network issues. But as I was saying, what is happening is they're trying to say that men's and women's restrooms should not exist, and that all restrooms should necessarily be gender neutral.
I have yet to hear a single person try to make that argument.
Well,
There have
that's
been
what,
some people that suggest that that could work because it works in other countries. Not that there needs to be segregation for men and women. All you do is to go in there, go piss, take a shit, put on your makeup, etc. And that's what bathrooms are for. And it's this fear mongering that says, "Oh, this people are going to use this law to commit another law or break another law," which doesn't
but
happen.
it's already it already has happened in places to where they're implementing such changes, sir.
Name one case.
Oh, okay. Let's see here. Man jailed. Okay, a man jailed after 10-year-old says he watched her in the bathroom. Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
You broke out. I heard only half of what you were saying.
Oh, okay. Man charged after 10-year-old says he watched her in the bathroom. And this is a place where changes in the law happen. Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Well, a Quarryville, Pennsylvania man was arrested and charged after a 10-year-old girl told her mother that she caught him watching her as she used the bathroom. James Thomas Shoemaker,
Okay.
19, faces 1 count of invasion of privacy in connection with the April 14th incident at the Sheets in the 1100th block of Manheim Pike. Employees at the store said Shoemaker had been in the bathroom for about an hour. This literally happened when
Yes.
they started changing their laws.
And I know exactly what case you're talking about. And here's a little fun fact. A, he didn't claim he was transgender. B, that's still illegal. C, there's no problem. He was arrested for doing something illegal. Preventing a transgendered woman from going is what you're trying to do.
Well, that
To use the men's restroom or a unisex, which is basically economically, it's not going to happen. You cannot force a business to make room for another restroom.
but here's the
So like I said, you're the one that's trying to force men into the women's restroom and women into the men's restroom.
that is ridiculous, sir. Because well, let me go back to something you said real quick. He said he didn't claim to be transgender. There's a lot of feedback going on, man.
I just started my truck.
But
It's hot.
okay, you said he didn't claim to be transgender. Well, so what? If he gets caught in the act, all he would have to do is deny it. It's not like you have an identification of being a transgender person.
No, but guess what? What he did was still illegal, and he got arrested. So
He very well could be a transgender person and just said that he wasn't.
But he didn't use as an excuse to go into the women's restroom. A, B, what he did was still illegal and would still be illegal under these new ordinances protecting people from bigots. And C, like I said, you are the one that wants to force women to go into the men's room and men to go into the women's room. You're the one that thinks.
No, it's not about force because the overwhelming majority of civilized citizens in society who have no problem with men's and women's restrooms are not going around harassing LGBT people over bathrooms. It's not happening. Hold on, man, you're breaking up. Yes, it's not an issue. The overwhelming majority of civilized citizens who have no problem with men's and women's restrooms are not harassing LGBT people. Okay,
You're just passing
it's a
laws.
non-issue. No, we're not passing laws on anything. They are demanding that laws be passed to allow them to say, if I merely claim to be a man, that I should be able to walk into a man's restroom if they were biologically born a woman. The law passing, enforcing is happening on your side, not ours.
Well, no. See, this is exactly what's been happening for pretty much the recorded history. People who are trans and actually transition. Look, say a man transitioning to a woman. They identify as female. It's like I said, it's not something you just wake up and decide one day, oh, all of a sudden I'm female, now I get to go into this restroom. No, it does not work that way. It's never happened that way. They have, as a transgendered woman, I would be using the female restroom when I look female. And that would be that. And guess what? I don't have any other way to put this. How the fuck are you going to know whether I have a penis between my legs or not if I'm in there using the restroom? I'm not in there trying to spy on people like that case you try to use, which would still be illegal. Giving protections to transgendered individuals is what's needed. And also, with these kind of laws, what you get is exactly what female enough. It was actually dragged to the restroom, clean herself up, because they thought she was a man. You create this unrealistic standard of who is masculine and who is feminine. And if you don't meet that,
Well, take Caitlyn Jenner, for example. It's indisputable the dude is biologically a man, but he merely...
Actually, it's she. Please use the correct pronouns.
No, don't force me to say she. I'll call the dude Caitlyn, but don't force me to say she. Now let me finish my point.
So, do you want me to call you a
No. Let me finish my point. Don't interrupt me. Let me finish my point. Caitlyn Jenner was biologically born a man, okay? And that's the indisputable scientist of Caitlyn Jenner. If he wanted to use the women's restroom, he could.
And let me stop you right there. You don't even know what it means to be biologically male or female.
If there are legit issues of hermaphroditism, I understand that those are legit issues.
Not even that thing.
No, let me finish.
What makes you male?
Don't interrupt me. Let me finish. If you biologically have a vagina, you're a female. If you biologically have a penis, you are a male, period.
Have you ever heard of sexual reassignment surgery? It creates a vagina. That is a biological vagina.
Well, yes,
So,
you can definitely try to change your genitalia, but that does not take away the scientific genetic makeup of what you were biologically born with.
okay, so tell me what scientific genetic data makes you male or female?
Like I said, if you were born not dealing with cases of legit issues of hermaphroditism, generally speaking, if you were born with a vagina, you're a female. If you were born with a penis, you're a male. That's it.
Okay, well, that is a societal construct.
No,
it has absolutely no bearing.
It's science, sir.
And
it's not societal construct.
It's not science. If person A could be born, we'll just say, I was kind of hoping you were going to be, honestly, dumb enough to try and go for the XY and XX chromosomes. There is such a thing as a female, in all regards, except they can't reproduce, being born with XY chromosomes, but they have androgen insensitivity, which means that, as I've said to other people, all babies are formed in the womb as a female. It is not until you get a wash of hormones and a genetic marker on the Y chromosome that allows your body to make changes due to the testosterone. So there's no such thing as being born male or female. Gender is a societal construct. It's all how you identify as I said with that one individual who was born male, had his penis fucked up by the Christian cult, which is circumcision. They changed his genitalia to be female, but he knew in his mind he was male.
Well, that was a rare, tragic case that you presented there, but that has absolutely nothing to do with the indisputable science that states if you have a penis, you're a dude. If you have a vagina, you're a girl. It's that simple. That's not societal. Science. No, it's not societal construct. It's science. It's biology, sir.
Okay, so let me ask you something. If you have penile cancer and you get your penis removed, are you no longer male?
Yeah, you still do because you were
Okay,
biologically
so a
born
penis
with
has
it.
absolutely nothing to do with you being male. If you can have your penis
But
removed and you
if you
still
were
consider
born
yourself male,
if you were born with that, then the biology of your makeup states that you're a male, and
wrong,
and a good indicator of that is looking at your genitalia,
wrong.
and they can actually
Sorry.
do biological tests to find people to be male and females. They have actual biological tests for this, sir.
Yes, and I already debunked that.
No, you didn't.
Would you consider a woman who has XY chromosomes but has what's called androgen insensitivity? For all intents and purposes, they have breasts, they have a vagina, their ovaries do not work. But you would consider them female, but they have XY chromosome, meaning that in your mind they're male. So would you call them a he?
But just because there are certain rare conditions,
It doesn't matter if there's even one
if there's certain
that
rare
defeats your whole
conditions, if there's certain rare conditions that overlap at certain points, that does not take away the general issue, sir. But that's just like saying this. Sometimes people are born with an extra finger. That does not make them not human. What the heck are you talking about?
What the hell are you talking about, dude? You don't know what you're talking about.
Because you're trying to say that gender is a societal construct.
It is.
But you can have a case to where a human is born with an extra finger. That does not mean that person isn't human any more than you have certain.
You're trying to compare apples and oranges here. What I'm telling you is,
No, explain
as I said
why.
with that one
Explain
case,
why it's an apple and orange. Explain why it's an apple and orange. You can't just sit up here and make the accusation that it's apples and oranges and not explain why it's apples and oranges. So explain why.
let me try to correct you here. I know that you're not going to accept it. That I mean, you're a Christian. It's okay.
Okay, stop poisoning the well, sir. Stop poisoning the well. That's what you. That's a logical fallacy.
There's no such thing as a smart Christian. I mean, that's
No,
just a fact.
what you're
See,
doing.
so you don't like my facts.
No, what you're doing is
Ad hominem.
saying I'm a Christian. Yes, it's an ad hominem attack, and what you're doing is you saying that I'm a Christian, and therefore no arguments I give are going to be credible based on the fact that you attack me.
Because the arguments
that's the
that
poison
you
of
have
the will,
given
sir.
have been
That's an ad hominem
refuted. Shut the fuck up. I'm trying to talk.
No, they have not. No, they have not. You're poisoning the will by trying to attack my character of my personal beliefs. I'm not going to attack your
be
character.
quiet. Hush, child. Hush.
Let me finish my point. I'm not going to attack your character as a non-Christian to impugn your position, because I'm actually more intellectually sound than that.
Oh, sure, yeah, you intellectual. You hang out with Drew and Piers. You consider you're literally right. His fucking dick from what I've seen.
Well, you can attack me all day, sir. That doesn't equate to an argument. You can attack me all day.
I've already refuted you with that one case. And as I was trying to say, with that one case that I provided to you, it actually proves to you that gender is a societal construct. It's what is in between what's in between your ears is what actually makes your gender. That individual, even though they had female genitalia, were raised female, still identified as male. He was a man. He identified as a man. But with what you're saying is, no, it's
Well, let's go with that. You say what's between your ears determines your gender. Well, there was a lady who legitimately felt like she was a cat. Like she literally felt like she was a cat.
Apples and oranges.
How? Explain how. You said what is between your ears determines who you are. So.
No, I said what determines what gender you are.
Okay, but she legitimately feels like she's a cat.
Yes.
So how are you going to presume
that is actually considered
like she's a cat?
That is actually considered a mental disorder.
But actually, a top medical professional had said that transgenderism was a medical disorder.
Yeah, and except for the only people who actually matter in regards to defining what is and is not a medical disorder is the World Health Organization, and they have deemed that transgenderism is not a medical or a mental disorder.
Oh, so he's just making a fallacious appeal to authority.
No, that's actually who decides what is and is not what is and what is not a mental disorder.
That is a fallacious appeal to authority. So
that's not an appeal to authority.
Yes,
Do you
it's a
even know what an
fallacious
appeal to authority is?
Yes, it is. You're looking to an authority fallaciously to build your argument.
See, actually, I'm going to explain to you exactly what an appeal to
I know
authority
what
is.
an appeal
It's
to
when you
authority
say something like,
is.
person
I know what
A,
it is.
you obviously don't because you're saying I'm appealing to
No,
authority. I'm
well,
appealing to the fact.
let me explain to you what it is, so I can tell you that I know what it is.
You don't.
Well, you want me to explain to you what it is, so I can tell you I know what it is? Yeah, I'm sorry, man. You were breaking up a bit there. What you say? Yeah. Say that one more time. You keep breaking up.
I said, you really need to get a better internet connection. I suggest you quit your fast food job.
I don't work in fast food, sir. Are you gonna just attack me personally all day, or you want to have a mature
No, I'm
conversation?
loving it. It's fun making fun of you. I mean, you are ignorant. You don't know what you're talking
And
about.
and it's also an insult of people who work in fast food, sir. I mean, there are people who are legitimately struggling to get by and to like really go certain places in their life, and at the present time they may have to settle for work like fast food or something until something better comes along. So for you to attack fast food is
I
just
love
you
I love how you
insulting
think
people.
I love how you think me assaulting them. Consider I work 2 full-time jobs and go to college full-time. So yeah, go
Well,
ahead and tell me more about the struggle.
I'm not telling you about struggle. What I'm telling you is you say you attack me on a place that you have absolutely no clue about. It's talking about don't quit or you attack fast food, okay?
No,
Like
I
as if
attacked
that
you.
imputes you attack me allegedly working at fast food as if being in
Well,
fast food impugns my position.
you lack an education. You have shit for internet. You don't know what you're talking about. So I mean, I'm
How do
sorry.
you know it
I
wasn't your,
extrapolated.
how do you know it wasn't your internet? It could have been either one of our net connections, sir.
Considering I'm in the middle of Miami with a 4G connection that gets over 100 megabits per second download speed, yeah, I'm sure
Well,
it's my
so am
internet.
I. Well, so am I. So what are you gonna say?
The same thing I just said. You have a shit internet connection, but you already got dropped once. You don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I got
You're
dropped once with
arguing
my
from
internet.
ignorance.
That doesn't mean that nothing happened on your connection at any time just because I got dropped once. And you trying to attack me without even knowing me, as if I did work in fast food, that would all of a sudden make my argument illogical. That's just stupid, sir. Even if I did work in fast food, that does not magically make my argument illogical. So for you to focus on, a fast food point, it's just you
Get a
just
better
talking
internet connection.
stupid. You just talking stupid, sir. You focusing on fast food
Get a
points,
better
just you
internet
talking
connection.
stupid.
No, I'm actually
Because
My
I made a
internet's
lot.
working perfectly fine. It seems that he keeps breaking up. So
Yeah, I'm not hearing Carlos break up at all. You're the only one breaking up.
Mhm.
So how is it my connection when I can hear Carlos just fine?
I can hear Carlos just fine as well.
Well, that doesn't mean it's necessarily my connection. It could be either one
It
of
is. It
ours.
is your connection.
Whatever. I'm not about to argue about this all day. Here's
Here's
the
the
fact.
point.
What?
That is for them to use. They identify. Your fingerprints are going to
you're
use
cutting up. We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, man. See, why don't you try resetting and we can find out for sure whose connection it is. Why don't you try resetting and see if it may not be your connection? You're breaking up, man. You want to try resetting your connection?
Are you on a phone or a computer?
Just like
I'm not
reset
coming
real
back
quick.
in, and
Are you,
I'll just make sure to go ahead and unfriend you. I don't know why I did in the first place. You're a fucking dumbass.
right.
Well, I mean, you just seem to have a chip on your shoulder, sir.
Oh man.
Right. He does that all the time. The guy wished that I would die and get cancer the first day I met him, you know. He's immature, he's an imbecile. Um, and he thinks that he can make a logical argument simply by attacking the person's character. Um, if you're an atheist, you're an atheist. You know, you're anti-theist, you're anti-theist. Um, it's just funny how so many of these people attack the integrity of Christian people and stuff like that. But it's okay for him to call people names. It's okay for him to insult people. It's okay for him to make fallacious arguments. And yet, supposedly these are some of the reasons why he can't stand Christians himself. The man's a hypocrite.
Yep.
And I honestly, I'm surprised that it lasted this long. I wish he could have stayed long enough. So Joe, an actually intellectually sound, respectable atheist, could share his position as well. Because when he does that, man, he doesn't make his cause. He really damages his cause.
Yeah. I heard. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I heard some of it. It was pretty interesting. So I just think whenever you have to speak in generalities to define anything. For example, if you were to look in a textbook, starting from as soon as we actually knew what chromosomes are, you would say that humans, in every textbook ever, says that there's 46 chromosomes. But that doesn't mean that that's the only amount of chromosomes they can have. They can have less. They can have Down syndrome. They can have more. They can have up to 66. I mean, but there's got to be some. And whenever I'm saying generalities, I'm not saying over 50%. I'm saying 99.5 probably. So whenever you're defining what a human is, 46 chromosomes, then you're defining what a man is. You say that he has X chromosome and a larger amount of testosterone than estrogen. There's a whole bunch of testicles, penis, a lot of things that go along with it, prostate. You have to speak in generalities to 99.9. It doesn't mean if you can come up with a .01 example, it negates the entire thing. If that was the case, it would be hard to define species. Everything would explode, I think.
Right, and that was essentially the point I was making. I was like, that's just like saying that if somebody, if a mutation happens with some, which would happen in some human beings, someone is like, say, born with an extra finger, that all of a sudden makes them not a human. That's stupid. Just because you have certain mutations that occur, or certain overlap may happen as a result of mutations, does not mean that there isn't a binary gender that exists. Even more than the mutation of growing an extra finger means that you're not a human being.
Right. And another thing, because he, before he went on his emotional tirade there, he was trying to make it seem as if, gender is a social construct. But who, so basically, they're gonna completely ignore the science. They're gonna completely ignore the biology of this. If the standard is based on a human being, what makes him saying that he's a female more authoritative than me saying you're a man? Who has the final say so? So if so it should be fair. I mean, if you have well, hold up 1 second. If you have the right to say I'm a female, okay, cool. You're not going to use science. All right, that's your opinion. All right. Well, I have the right to say that you're not a female and you're a man, and I have science to support that. Why are you being so mad at me? Because I'm expressing my opinion, which also is a fact. Which is a fact. Why? What is the problem with me saying that you're a man and you saying you're a female? If it's all just a matter of the person.
And you want to sit up here and talk about, that's a great point, Brother Carlos. And you want to sit up here talk about gender as a social construct, but you're the one who's a social justice warrior trying to impose social injustice upon society to indoctrinate society with the standard that gender is a social construct. So you're trying to construct that as a standard. So I can argue, in opposition to if society accepts that just become a social construct.
Well, one thing that they also say is that it's just a social construct, but so let's look across all cultures, across every continent. I mean, at some point, the male and female role had to be assumed. It's homogenous across all cultures, across
Right.
all continents. So,
Because the
I mean,
male-female
that's
paradigm
a
is
pretty big
literally
conspiracy, if you ask me.
the
Right.
male-female paradigm is literally the only way reproduction can happen. It
Right.
cannot happen any other way without a male-female paradigm. It can't.
Right. And I want to know what really constitutes a person, being a woman, feeling like a woman. I mean, you're not dealing with, sexual stigmas that, most women face growing up. You're not dealing with puberty. You're not dealing with, your period, menstruation cycle. You're not dealing with the fact that you could possibly become pregnant. All you're simply doing is butchering yourself or doing some surgical process, putting a wig or putting some makeup on yourself and adding some silicone in yourself, and I'll automatically think you're a freaking woman. And you made up a good point about the trans species argument. Why can't this woman identify as a male tiger? Why can't she identify as a male cat? Why can't I identify as a female panda? Why can't I be a male giraffe?
Exactly. How do we know
Can I
there's
be
not
a male unicorn from the planet Jupiter? I mean, how far can you take it? You know what I mean?
right? And if you want to say what's between your ears is what determines gender, who are you to necessitate that the gender? What if there is a legit issue of someone feeling like they're a species of a different species? Who are you to say that that's necessarily a disorder, but transgenderism isn't?
Yeah, that's actually a thing. It's called otherkin. It's whenever you think that's literally like that's been popping up. I saw it on a couple different channels. It's called otherkin. It basically means that you were born in a human body, but you really think you're like a dragon or a tiger or something. But one thing that I think gets glossed over about the bathroom thing, which is the key point, that they automatically go to well, name me a time whenever someone was posing as transgender and molested somebody. Well, I'm sure if you dig deep enough you could, but that's beside the point.
Right.
Whenever you say that gender's fluid, it doesn't matter. Right now, I totally look like a male, deep voice, I wear male clothes. If that law was passed, it doesn't matter how I look or anything. I can go into whatever bathroom I want. So it's not necessarily speaking directly towards the transgender.
Well, that's
It's
what I
it's
told him.
it's speaking directly towards men, any man at any time being able to go in another bathroom with a woman. And what we do know is men, regardless if they're transgender or not, are animals, and they always end up screwing things up in bathrooms and everything else. That's what we're concerned about, not about the 0.03% of the population who's transgender.
Right. And not only that, you should have heard this guy talking. He was literally trying to force me to say that Caitlyn Jenner was a she, and Caitlyn Jenner, biologically, indisputably born a male. He tried to force me to say she, because I said Caitlyn Jenner, who's a dude, and he's like, no, she. And he tried to bully me into saying she. I was like, no, 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 no. I will call him Caitlyn if that's what he wants to call himself, but you ain't gonna force me to say that that's a woman. No, don't do that. He
Right.
tried to bully me and force me, and I didn't let him do it.
Let me ask you a question. Has there ever been and I'm pretty sure that, so some of these people with a degenerate mind are trying to work on this, but which of course it wouldn't be natural to begin with. But have you known of any recorded um situation where two women, a woman got another woman pregnant, or a man got another man pregnant? Okay.
Right, it's never
Why?
happened.
Because man and a man can only get a woman pregnant, right? So Bruce Jenner is not a woman, okay? He is a freaking man with kids. He's a grandfather,
Right.
you know?
Only the male component can get a woman pregnant, and it can happen through direct consensual sex, or it can happen through artificial insemination, or it can happen through in virtual feed in virtual in how it's IVF in virtual fertilization.
In
I'm
vitro.
at, yeah, in vitro. There you go. In vitro fertilization. But no matter how you do it, either way, requires the male component. Period. You have to have the male and the female component to reproduce. You cannot reproduce with both of the same components. It just does not happen. So if you're going to try to argue against biology and try to say it's just a social construct, then how do you deal with the fact that you cannot have um, two dudes or two women at any time, two components of the same gender or sex or whatever you want to refer to it as, and reproduce? Explain that.
Right, right. And it's they can't, you know. And it goes to the point where even at the chromosome level, as Brother John was talking about, um, the thing is, they're trying to objectify certain body parts and make it seem as if this is what makes you a male or this is what makes you a female. But you know, the identity it breaks down at a molecular level. You know, it's more than just the outward appearance. You know, you're not telling me that if a transgender, God forbid, somebody murdered a transgender, um, burn them to the point where you could barely tell who it was, and that these detectives do testing on them, that they're not going to determine that this is a man. They're not going to sit there and say, oh, this was a female. They're going to know, because it doesn't matter if you look completely crispy and you can't tell who you are. It doesn't matter if you throw a wig. It doesn't matter if you put some makeup on yourself, you do surgery or anything. The reality is that person is a man. And don't force that. It's like Dave Chappelle said, I'm not going to switch up my pronoun game for you. I'm not going to do that, all right? I'm going to call a spade a spade. I'm going to call a woman, and I'm going to call a man, a man. But let me tell you, as unfortunate as this situation is, a part of me is excited that this situation is at the forefront of society, because it lets you really know how immature, how gullible, and how naive these people can be, especially these liberals. And I no longer feel the need or responsibility to try to convince these people on certain things as I used to, because now I see is you guys are not even trying to be reasonable. You guys are not even trying to be logical. You guys are just purely being emotional to the point where you're upset because I call a man a man.
Exactly. Thank you. And after I destroyed all his arguments, he started attacking me personally and talking about me allegedly working in fast food as if that would magically make my argument invalid if I did. Like, really, dude?
Like, I think they think of gender or sex, whatever, they probably say gender. They think of it as like a scientific proof. Like, for example, if there was a case where gravity didn't act in such a way that we predicted, it didn't fall at 9.8 meters per second squared consistently, we would have to throw out the entire model. But it's different than that, because you're speaking towards something that you have to nail down in a general sense. In general, it would be 99.9. So just because you can find one case, it's not like a scientific proof. You don't throw the whole thing out. I think that's where they get caught up.
Right, they try to extrapolate one case is to say, oh, it's a construct. Find one case of mutation happening where there's certain genetic overlap, and bam, it's a construct. That's just as stupid as saying that a mutation happens and you were born with an extra finger, bam. You're not human, because humans generally have 5 fingers on each arm appendage. Okay, they generally have 5 fingers on, with their hands, not 6. But if you're born with an extra finger, bam, you're not human. That's just dumb. To find a rare genetic mutation or genetic overlap that happens in rare cases does not take away from the general consistent science when that does not happen.
Right.
And that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to use extremely, extremely rare cases to try to argue against the consistency of what we see in science.
Right. Right.
He started attacking me personally, like talking about fast food and all this other stuff. Like, really?
I heard you talking earlier, so I don't know who you were talking to about like the positive claims, the negative claims, and all that. So was there an atheist
Yeah,
saying
it
that?
was the same guy.
Oh, it was him? Yeah, I didn't hear. Like I just heard you talking with I think this guy Emmanuel about it, but so was his position that he like was taking the positive position or the he was affirming that there was no God?
Yes,
Or
he
was
did.
Well,
he being like agnostic atheist or what?
No, he did. He was trying to basically say what atheism in a sense of lack of belief, but that he is an anti-theist and he knows that God doesn't exist and he can prove it. So
Oh wow.
yeah, he was affirming that.
Yeah,
but what I was
that's
explaining to him was
bad
that
position.
take lack of belief, right? And if I were to play his same games for theism, all I would have to do is say is that theism is the lack of belief that God does not exist. And he claimed that was a double negative. And what I explained to him was like, this is not a double negative for this reason. If I take the statement, I believe God does not exist, that is the positive claim that God does not exist. That is the positive statement of the non-existence of something. And since that's a positive statement, to lack that statement, therefore, is not a double negative. So if I were to play the same games as you are for atheism, I could just say theism is the lack of belief that God does not exist. That's not a double negative. When I proved to him that that wasn't a double negative, he just started attacking me personally, saying, "You need to get your refund on your schooling," and I just exposed the fallacy in his nonsense, and he couldn't deal with it. Period.
Yeah, he would if he's taking the Gnostic atheist position, then yeah, you could just sit back in your chair and say, okay, prove it.
Thank you.
But
So
if he was take like, well, the weak atheist and strong atheist is basically speaking toward agnostic atheist or Gnostic atheist. So agnostic atheist would be because atheist speaks towards belief, and Gnosticism speaks towards
knowledge.
knowledge. So you can be both. You can be an agnostic atheist or a Gnostic atheist, and a Gnostic atheist would say that you know there is no God. So
Right. Actually, I met a Gnostic atheist in Neff's Hangout a while back. That was the first, not a while back, actually, probably 3 weeks ago. And when he first said that, I was confused. That was the first time I heard of it. But thanks for clearing that up, what that means, because I was confused. I was like, Gnostic atheist? I'm like, wait, you mean like mystical Gnosticism? Like,
yeah,
Let,
it would
let's
be like the hard atheist. But even like militant atheists, like for example Richard Dawkins. I can't remember. I haven't read most. I only read read his the Selfish Gene book. I haven't read the other ones, but in some of the other books, he says that on if the chances of God existing or his degree of atheism would be like a 6 out of 7. So even Richard Dawkins, who is basically a fire-breathing atheist, he's not even a Gnostic atheist. So
right, and if you take the concept of Gnostic atheism, if you say that atheism
Oh wait,
is
can I say something?
oh, well, let me finish my point. You can come in, E. If you would take the position of Gnostic atheism, and then you also say on the side that atheism is the lack of belief that God exists, then I can extrapolate that to Gnostic theism, that I know a God exists. And if I'm a Gnostic theist, I know that a God exists, then I lack belief. Because if I'm claiming knowledge, necessarily I cannot have a belief because I will have knowledge, right? So a Gnostic theist would be an atheist by his logic for the lack of belief that God exists. You see the problem with his reasoning? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what really doesn't make sense is that thing, Gnostic atheist. You don't know that God exists, but yet at the same time you're saying He doesn't.
Exactly.
Okay, you have to repeat that.
Me?
Let's say that again.
Yeah.
I don't. How does Gnostic atheist make sense? You're basically saying that at the same time you know God doesn't exist, but yet you don't know if He exists at all.
Well, he was trying to claim that he lacked belief in God and that he was a Gnostic atheist at the same time.
Yeah, Antonio, man, I'm sorry, you forgot to put the link in the Hangout, dude. Oh, unless you were trying to do just a private Hangout, would you like me to post the link for you?
Yeah, you can post it if you want.
All right, go ahead.
Do people want to come in here or something?
No, well, because I was going through the feed earlier, and I noticed that I just noticed that John had commented on your post. The reason that John was able to come here is that on the side chat on the YouTube, I seen him asking for a link, so I invited him.
That's cool.
But yeah, so you want to post a link on the page?
Yeah, that's fine. Cool.
All right, go ahead.
So you're saying, Emmanuel, you're saying there's a contradiction in being an agnostic atheist?
Yeah, because agnostic is you don't know. Atheist is the rejection of God. So how are you basically both? You don't know, but yet you know at the same time.
No, because atheism speaks towards belief. Agnosticism speaks towards knowledge. So if you're the technical way of saying it, an agnostic atheist would be does not believe any God exists, but doesn't claim to know whether this is actually true. Now, if you were to be a Gnostic, so not an A, just a G, Gnostic atheist, you would say believe that there is no God to exist and claims that belief is true. So it's speaking towards both belief and knowledge.
I think this issue of like stuff like strong and weak atheism is stupid because it can be simplified like this. Atheist believes that a God does not exist. Theist believe that a God does exist. Agnostic, one who doesn't hold a position either way.
Well, that's just not the definition in general, but you could look at it that way. But
Yeah.
if you're gonna be like if you look at it from atheism speaking towards belief and Gnostic basically means knowledge. So they're two separate things.
Right.
You could even be an agnostic theist. I mean, it's just a qualifier. It's useful.
What they'd like to do is they'd like to play with definitions and positions. Like, I'm a weak atheist or whatever. I'm not a strong atheist. But like that is just absolutely stupid because mere lack of belief is just a psychological position. It's not anything. Okay, it's not anything that is anything. The mere lack of belief is not anything you can base anything on. It doesn't indicate to anything or explain anything. So you can't just simply just claim to merely like a belief, then just attack the God concept all day as if there's something going on beyond just merely like a belief.
Well, it's kind of like the proposition that the Earth is flat. Either you believe the Earth is flat or you don't. So, I mean, you could say that same thing. Like, why would the person who believes in a ellipsoid Earth or a spherical Earth, why would he even bother with the flat Earthers? Well, if they believe in something that you don't, and you debate them on that, that doesn't mean you have no position. You believe that the Earth is spherical. So,
Right.
I mean, I think it's analogous to the atheist-theist debate. And yeah, I mean, one could just say, instead of getting deep into the labels, you could say, I don't believe that there is sufficient evidence for me to conclude whether that a God exists. That could be just a way to say it if you want to stay away from the labels.
Well, you said you can either believe that there is a flat Earth, you either believe it or you don't. I think the way to say it is like this: either you believe there is a flat Earth, or you believe there is not a flat Earth.
Right. Well, belief. I'm not even sure if there's technically a. I don't even know if I've not really heard lack of belief too much, because either I believe it or I don't. I mean, you can, as far as you thinking that you're 100% correct, that's a separate story. But like, for example, do I believe that ghosts exist? Well, no, I don't. I don't have a lack of belief that ghosts exist. I just don't think they exist. Now that's different from saying I know they don't exist. I'm just saying I don't believe they exist. So I think there's a meaningful distinction there.
Um, yeah. I'm just making the point that um, if you merely lack belief in something, you're not saying anything. Like, here's the thing: if a person who believes that God does not exist, it would be true that they lack a belief that God exists. Yes, that's true, but that's not true about who they are. That's true about who they are not. Okay? If somebody asks me what my name is, and they say, "What is your name?" and I say, "My name is not Jim or not Terry or not Timothy or not Stephen," that doesn't tell me what my name is. You cannot say, "Oh, that what defines my name is what my name is not." That doesn't say what my name is. And what
Right.
they
Well,
try to
well,
do is
it,
what they say atheism lacks makes atheism what it is. What atheism is not is what makes atheism was what it is. That's what they're trying to say, and it's illogical.
yeah, but atheism isn't informing. Um, a lot can be inferred from the title atheism, but atheism in and of itself isn't informing a worldview per se. I mean, it could allude to like uniformitarianism, materialism, scientism, all these things, but atheism in and of itself is simply just speaking towards belief slash knowledge of a proposition
Right,
a deity,
right. There is
deity.
a belief there. There is, yeah, atheism. It's not a lack of belief because atheists lacking belief says nothing about who they are. Because
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that atheism lacks or is not. For example, atheism is not dog crap, but not being dog crap does not make atheism what it is. So how does atheism not being theism make atheism what it is?
not being the. I guess I don't see the issue really. I mean, for example, if you just switch it over to like ghosts, say that you believe the ghosts exist, I don't. And we go to have an argument about this. My non-belief in ghosts isn't informing my worldview necessarily. You can
Right.
infer things from that, but that doesn't rule out me being able to criticize that you do believe in ghosts.
Well, what I'm saying is they're trying to argue that X equals not X. Atheism, which is what X is, equals not X. Lack of belief. X equals not X. Plain and simple, that's illogical.
So So it's theism to atheism is belief in God and not a belief in God. So that would be the
Atheism, yeah, the paradigm is theism is the belief that God exists, and atheism is the belief that God does not exist. The
yeah.
paradigm is not um, um, theism is the belief that God exists, and atheism is the lack of belief that God exists. That's not the paradigm. That's what they're trying to say what it is, and that's just a false paradigm.
Yeah, I pretty sure I agree. I'm not sure if you can have a sliding scale of belief. Either you believe something or you don't. But although you say I do not believe, that doesn't mean that you're saying I know this for a fact to be true. For like just like I said with ghosts, I would say I do not believe in ghosts, but there would be a scale there. Where would I say, do I really know that? Well, I know that 90% sure. I'm not positive, but that doesn't mean that I lack belief. I still have no belief, but I can't for sure say it's true or not.
Right. But if I say I don't believe in something, that isn't true about me. That's true about what I am not. You see, if I say that I am not something, that is not true about me. That's true about what I am not. What I am not can never be true about me at all.
Well, things can be inferred from it. If you say you're not a female, then we can tell a lot of information about you from that.
Well, in the typical communication of human language, you can you can definitely infer certain things, yes. But as a point of logic, I'm speaking from a perspective of logic, not from typical human interaction. I'm speaking from a position of logic. Logically speaking, me saying what I am not does not say what I am. Me saying what I am not does not tell anything about what I am. I
How?
cannot say that what I am not defines what I am.
Well,
There
you
are
could
positive attributes for that. Like if I say I am not a woman, that if I say I am not a woman, that does not say anything about who I am, because especially with today's society, they can just say I am not a woman, but still claim to be an animal.
right, but I mean if you're if you're speaking if you look at it like from a binary standpoint, basically it would be like basically a dichotomy. Either um, you're a theist or you're not a theist. So the thing and the direct negation of the thing. So if we have a dichotomy and you say I am not X, then that means that you'd be the other thing.
Well, me, I am not X was true before I was not even born, and it's true even if I do not exist. Like take this for example. Um, um, the present king of France does not exist and does not believe in a God. Those statements are true even if the present king of France does not exist.
Well, you said he didn't exist in that statement.
Yes, and what I'm saying is this. If I say I am not a theist, that was true even before I existed. Like, take this for example. I lacked existence. I did not exist a billion years ago. Thus, I lacked existence. But if you don't exist, then you cannot have a belief. So I lacked existence a billion years ago. Thus, I lacked belief. It was true even before I existed.
You didn't lack existence. You had no existence.
No, if I say I did not exist
Yes,
a
that's right.
billion years ago, I lacked existence.
Yeah, I just think okay, it just depends what you mean by lack. If you're equating lack and okay, lack of existence and no existence are the same, then that's fine. Are you saying there's a difference between the two?
Um, no. If you did not exist a billion years ago, it just lack of means just lack. The operator for lack is not okay. The logical operator of lack is not. Like for example, um, an orange, an orange lacks. Let me put this. An orange lacks dirt, like inside of it. An orange lacks dirt inside of it. An orange does not have dirt inside of it. The logical operator for lack is not. You see what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Okay, so let's take this back to the atheist theism thing. So what necessarily is your problem? Like, what does this boil down to? What's your issue directly?
My problem is they're saying X equals not X. They're trying to define something by what it lacks. Basically, they're trying to say what they are not equals what they are, and that's just illogical.
I literally just don't see the issue. If you say
That
just
is,
be
that's an issue. X equals not X is not illogical to you.
I don't see where the x equals not x part is. If you're asking about a specific proposition, do you believe it or don't you believe it? If you say you don't, that there's not anything illogical about that. If someone says, "Do you believe in God?" and I say no, I'm an agnostic atheist, there's nothing illogical about that position. That position in and of itself, I mean, you could get further into an argument and maybe someone would,
Well, if I say
but
I don't believe in God, that doesn't tell me anything about myself because
it's not supposed to.
that can, but that's not really communicating anything. Because
Yeah,
if
it's
I say I
communicating
don't,
about the specific proposition. Like I said,
no, it's
a lot
no,
can
it's
be
not. Let me give you an example. If I say I don't believe in God, that can mean I'm an atheist or I'm a Gnostic theist.
right. Okay.
But it does not mean necessarily one or the other. It would make better sense just to say what I am or what I do believe rather than just saying what I'm not.
Okay, yeah. So you're saying if someone says, "What are you?" and I said human, that would be correct, but I need to go further. So I need to say I'm a human male. Then I need to go further than that and say I'm a human white male. Then I'll go further than that and say I'm a millennial. So yeah, a non-belief would be an umbrella term. And then you would dig further deep and further down, and you would say, okay, I'm an agnostic atheist, and that would be the deepest you could go if you're going to talk about speak towards belief. So yeah, when someone says they're a non-theist, there's a lot of things they could also be. But whenever I tell you I'm an agnostic atheist, then that tells you all you need to know.
And if they say I like belief in God, I'm like, okay, fine. Well, tell me what you believe. I could say I like belief that God. I could say as a theist, I like belief that God does not exist. Okay, tell me what you believe.
But Antonio, what if they say that they're not sure?
Well, that's quite different. If they're not sure, that's much different than trying to adopt a position of atheism and saying that it's merely a lack of belief.
It would go to the next thing because if you say, okay, are you an atheist or a theist? And I said atheist, then you say, okay, well, what do you believe? Well, that's a different question. And what are you speaking to specifically? Because whenever you ask a question, that's specifically what the answer is to. It's not answering more than that. So whenever you say, are you an atheist or theist? And I say atheist, whatever, you can ask another question, but just because I am answering the specific question, you might have peripheral questions you're going to ask, but you would have to just formulate those and ask again. You say, okay, so maybe the next question will be, okay, well, how do you think the Earth got here? I mean, that's another question you could go into. But whenever you ask a specific question and it gets answered, I don't see the issue.
Why don't you just tell me what you believe, not what you lack or what you don't have?
Okay, so then you would have to ask another question. So, okay, what do you believe in? Well, you can infer a lot from atheism, but you could just ask, okay, what do you believe in? I would say, okay, I believe in uniformitarianism. I believe in evolution. I believe in old Earth. There'd be a whole slew of things that you could infer from atheism, but you could just ask the next question. But just to
Do you
ask
guys
about,
mind if I ask a question to both of you really quick while you're in the middle of this?
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I don't want to get into my background. No one knows me, by the way. I'm just some random guy who watches your hangouts. But I am a philosophy student. and I have 3 degrees, and I'm going to university right now and taking a class specifically on this subject. And one of the things that I am getting from my class that I have found really useful in kind of digesting these ideas is that in philosophy, when philosophers are talking contemporarily about this subject, you don't talk about atheism versus theism. You might talk about theism as opposed to naturalism or to materialism or some other ism. Okay, but here's the essential question. I really don't find it useful to talk about atheism, and this is coming from my perspective as an atheist. An atheist is just a default definition that I fall under. Okay, my actual position is dictated by something like I'm a naturalist. Okay, and I might have to have a better burden of proof in proving why my naturalistic beliefs are the true ones as opposed to somebody else's theistic claims. All right, but within the purview, I just don't find it very useful to quibble about the definition of something that we just use as a placeholder for not having a position on something, or having a position, I suppose, that says that that thing that we're having a position about doesn't exist. It's not useful. It doesn't have content. In that notion is in both of your arguments, from what I've understood so far. And so I think you both, in a sense, owe it to one another that, yeah, you're right, but can we move? I'm asking this to the community as a whole. Can we move past this atheism versus theism debate and get more nuanced? Can we have better conversations about what we actually believe, and why it's important for us to believe them? Anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, so
defining atheism as a lack of belief is stupid.
it's not. No one really says that. They say it's either belief or not belief. There's not a sliding scale.
Saying atheism
it's
is not theism, and saying that it's not theism defines atheism is illogical. It's stupid, period.
I just don't understand your issue with it. Okay, you could just say
Because let me tell you my issue with it. Theism is not atheism, correct?
No, it would be the.
No. It's technically true that theism is not atheism, right?
It's the opposite. Yes.
Okay, so why would I define theism as the lack of atheism? Why would I do that?
That would be just a double negative. It would say I'm an atheist. Matt Slick says
no, it's not, because atheism is the positive belief that God does not exist, and the negation to that positive belief would not be a double negative.
If you would say a atheist, and then another atheist, then you would be a theist again.
No, the claim is the positive position that God does not exist. If I say I believe God does not exist, that is a positive belief in the non-existence of something. Negating a positive is not a double negative.
Man, I really just so you're talking. So okay, so is your issue that the atheist isn't taking the strong atheist position and saying there is no God? Is
my
that the
position is they're not being honest with themselves and just saying that we have positions of beliefs. Theists believe that God exists, and atheists believe that God does not exist. I cannot sit up here and define theism as the lack of belief that God exists. Theism is the positive belief that God exists, just like atheism is the positive belief that God does not exist. It's as simple as that.
It depends. Okay, I would agree with that, but at the same time, are you saying that the agnostic atheist in that situation would have a burden of proof? Is that what you're trying to get at, to where like each side has a burden of proof since they're claiming a positive and a negative?
Well, both sides are claiming a positive, so both sides have the burden of proof. Yes, they are, because you're dealing with two positive claims. One positive claim with theists is the belief that God exists, and the positive claim for atheists is the positive belief that God does not exist.
No.
Those are positive claims. Yes, they are.
Hold on though. Okay, what you're saying here, it is true. You have a burden of proof in one sense, okay? Because the claim of an atheist is God does not exist, okay? Or
No.
rather specifically, no. Rather specifically, it's I believe that there is no God, okay?
Right.
Yes, that is a positive
So the thing
claim,
is,
a positive belief in the non-existence of
that's
something.
fine. But you know how you get evidence for that? The only evidence you need of that is you ask the person, do you believe this is the case? And if the answer is yes, then they are that thing. And that's the only evidence you need. Now in terms of like world views and in terms of content to what you can believe, like I said, it's more useful, okay, to talk about things like materialism or things like naturalism.
Yeah,
Okay?
that would come
Because
next.
those have content, okay?
Right.
And then you would have a burden of proof. And you can get the conversation to go there, but it's a non-starter if you start with atheism. I mean,
Well, it's just
No, it
it's
is.
just
It's
it's just a
I don't
it's
believe
just
the
a
gods exist.
it's
No,
just it's an initial it's just a starting point. Then you move from there. So you're gonna start with the umbrella. Okay, what are you? Oh, yeah, I'm an atheist. Okay. So what is that? Are you a materialist, naturalist? What are you? It's just a starting point. It's not like you're just gonna argue from atheism to theism. I mean, obviously you're gonna dig further down. But something that I have an issue with already is saying that an atheist has some type of burden of proof. That's not how it works. That's not how it's ever worked. That'd be like me saying,
the burden of proof lies upon the one making the positive claim, and it
Yes.
doesn't matter if you're a theist or an atheist.
it matters because, for example, you're essentially
making a positive claim, it
essentially
doesn't
telling me
matter
to
what
prove a
side you're on.
negative. You're essentially telling me to prove a negative. That can't be done. If
No,
for
it's
example,
not.
For example, okay, fine. Do you believe in ghosts?
I believe that ghosts do not exist.
Okay, so prove it.
Say what?
So that you're making a negative claim, like you say the atheist is. So prove it. Prove it.
Well, if I were to say I believe that ghosts do not exist, I would have the burden of proof.
So what did you say? Do you believe they don't exist or not?
If you are asking me about ghosts, I would say that I would believe they do not exist.
Okay, so
I
prove it.
heard that to fill that type of burden of proof, you just have to state out the absence of evidence.
Those who
Wait, can I,
believe that
Antonio?
ghosts-
Can I say something real quick? Are you guys basically, Antonio? Is your case what you're saying? I mean, or what you guys are basically saying is there's a difference from saying that I believe God doesn't exist versus there's a difference from saying I believe God doesn't exist from saying I know God doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. If I said
There's a
I
few-
know, then I would have the burden of proof. But if I
Right.
say I believe he doesn't, but I could be wrong, that's different. If he's saying ghosts do exist, and I say I don't believe they do, he has to prove it. I don't have to go around proving that no ghosts exist. That's not how it works.
Well,
That-
I do agree that beliefs do not require the burden of proof. I do agree with that.
Right, which I think is the
Knowledge
point.
claims require the burden of proof. But
But
here's
that's the point.
That's the
But
point
here's-
you're making.
That's entirely the point. Because if you make a claim, okay, and you make the claim, I don't believe something, the only burden of proof is whether you believe it or not, whether you're lying about that proposition. And it's trivial to argue that. You should use the principle of charity just to assume that they're telling you the truth. Okay? So and that's the thing about atheism. I mean, it's such a voidless, meaningless concept. It just literally means I don't believe that a God exists.
Exactly.
Okay. Now we can have a different conversation, but it stops there. The burden of proof is made.
Then it would be absolutely pointless to say that theists have the burden of proof by having the positive belief that God exists. That
That's
would be
just
absolutely false.
This is how it's worked for thousands of years. I mean,
That's correct.
if you say that God exists, it's your onus to prove it.
If you
It's that
believe,
simple.
if you just say you believe God exists, then by your own argument, just saying a belief that God exists would not require a burden of proof.
You're absolutely true. If the question is, if you're just saying my position as a theist is that I believe God doesn't exist, okay, well then I go, okay, that sounds fine. Okay, but the thing is, and here's where this conversation usually goes in the end. That belief system is usually used okay, to make positive actions within the world in terms of like political policies or moral, stances and so on and so forth, and creating oughts, raising children, and all those sorts of things. When you actually act upon these things, you're kind of betraying the fact that you don't just merely believe it, but that you have a substantive worldview built on this, such that you're going to act upon it, and that's where the debate comes in.
Do you think atheism is the default position?
On a claim, yeah.
Yeah.
If you ask,
For example,
do I believe in God? That's the question. Okay, do I believe in God? Okay, and the positive position would be yes, I believe. Okay, if it's not that, if I don't accept or adopt the position, if I choose not to adopt it, the default, okay, is that I at least have some type of doubt out there. I at least don't believe it completely, okay? So that is it's technically a default. That is your default position, not to believe.
No.
So let me ask
The
Antonio.
mere lack of belief does not entail atheism. Like, for example, babies like belief that God exists and like belief that God does not exist, but that doesn't make babies atheists or theists just because of the mere lack thereof. It's
It
not
would
the
make them
default
ignorant.
position.
It would make them ignorant to the claim in the first place. I
Right.
mean, the whole debate wouldn't even come to that.
Right,
So-
babies are not
so
born
it's
atheists. Therefore,
That's fine.
atheism is not the default position, period.
That's fine. That's fine. And some people in erroneous language make claims like babies are atheists. Okay, that's fine. Okay, if you can't accept a proposition on any merits, then it's going to fall by the wayside. I mean, you can quibble about nonsense like that all day long, but the situation is, if you're an agnostic, you have not accepted the proposition. You don't believe it, at least completely. Now you can have a nuanced conversation about that. You can explain why you're on the fence, and you can not adopt atheism as a title. That's completely fine.
Right.
Okay.
So,
What question did you
wait,
have?
one second. Antonio.
Oh.
So basically, would you say? I'm sorry, Dennis. Would you say, and Antonio, would you say that it's more intellectually honest for a person to say I'm an agnostic than an atheist? And if a person is going to claim to be an atheist, it would be more consistent for him to claim that he's a strong atheist, and which in that case, he would have to meet the burden of proof.
What's honest to say is, if he's going to claim that he's an atheist, that's the belief that God does not exist. That's the honest position to take. Period.
I would come to you and say I'm a naturalist. I'm a scientific naturalist because I believe in methodological naturalism.
So,
Okay? And that would be my claim.
Which
Are you
belief
an
do you
atheist?
have?
Are you an atheist, Dennis?
I technically am an atheist, yes, but more
Okay.
specifically, I'm a philosophical naturalist.
But which
So,
belief do
are
you
you-
have?
Methodological naturalist. that's
Are
all.
you saying that there is no God, and you know that 100% sure whenever you say atheism?
I honestly never consider it outside of these kind of, I guess, mental puzzles that people engage in online. I enjoy that, but beyond that, I don't even think about it. I mean, in my biology labs, I mean, it never comes up. Seriously, it's evolution's the end all be all of the whole thing, and that's what we focus on.
So if it would make you feel better, I guess you could say that I don't believe there's sufficient evidence to believe in X. So therefore, I don't believe in X. But if there were evidence
And I am
to
an atheist
come,
on that proviso.
then
Yes.
it could be. So yeah. So if you just want to take that explanation instead of definitions, because it seems that you aren't necessarily a fan of them, then that would be what I would say I am.
Well,
Because
it just
you
depends.
also
It depends on what
say
the
that
conversation
there's-
is. It depends on what
Could
the
you also
conversation.
say that there isn't sufficient evidence to say that there is not X as well?
Not X.
No, I mean,
Like,
look,
there is
as a methodological naturalist, excuse me, that kind of betrays me as not necessarily believing that these absolutes are even possible. Okay, or at least they're not intellectually possible. I think maybe idealistically they might be possible, but we don't seem to have a logic that encompasses our ability to frame these things properly. That would be my position.
Now let me make a point here. Atheists, a lot of atheists that I've talked to typically said they haven't been presented with sufficient evidence to adopt the belief that God exists. Well, theists could also say that they haven't been presented with sufficient evidence to believe that God does not exist. It can go either way.
Well, it just comes down to the default position. Like, thinking about the God concept kind of muddies the water. Just think about anything else. Think about a ghost or a leprechaun or anything. Your default position is, do you believe in leprechauns? I say no. I don't. I don't think that there's sufficient evidence to believe in it, and that's it. And then if the other person claims, yeah, there is evidence, say, okay, well, show me, and then you see if I can agree with you. But it's not my onus to go around and look for it to try to prove the non-existence. The person who says there are leprechauns, and I would say, okay, then show me the evidence.
But hold on. I think that's where this conversation goes awry. Okay, because I 100% agree with you. But the thing is, if in the purview of your guys' conversation, okay, you have one person saying, I don't have sufficient evidence to say that God doesn't exist. Therefore, I believe. Okay? Look, that's fine if that's your position. And you don't have to offer up evidence as to why you believe that. However, if you're going to go further, if there's a reason that you want somebody else to accept that evidence and adopt that position, now you're going to have some room to grow. Okay, you're going to have to put up some arguments. But if you're just arguing some technical point, then okay, that's fine. You're a theist. Great. What do we do with that information?
Well, yeah, it's just the nature of G+. I mean, it's just obvious that that's going to be the next thing that follows. That's what, like, people get on here to argue. So, I mean, someone's going to take the positive claim and someone isn't. That's just the nature of a debate.
It would be the positive claim that a God exists, or the positive claim that God does not exist.
And since no one's taking the positive claim that God does not exist, then it would be the person who says that God does exist would have to prove the case.
But why would they have to?
There would be.
That's my question.
Because they're in G+. That's the whole point of this.
Nobody has to take. Nobody has to take the positive claim that God exists or the positive claim that God does not exist.
Yeah,
nobody has to take any positive claims.
That's right. We could just sit here. That's. I mean, you're right. It's not inherent that you have to defend. But I mean, if you're in G+, most people end up arguing about these things. The theist takes the positive position. The atheist takes the default position. You discuss the worldview, and the theist and atheist just argue. I mean, that's just the normal dynamic.
So I'm just humored by this. So and I mean it humored in the sense of not being derisive towards you, but so that's just the etiquette of Google Plus. That if we're atheists, we argue for atheism, and if we're theists, we argue for theism.
No, that's asinine. No.
Okay, well, okay, fair enough.
That's not what I said. I said
that kind of seems like what you were saying. But please clarify.
I said someone takes the positive position, someone takes the default position, then you argue it out. I'm saying that's even the wrong wordage. If you're going to be more technical, you could say the one taking the positive claim would put their argument forth. The one taking the default position would see if it's both valid and sound in structure and in form. Then you essentially just work back and forth from there.
There is no default position except for a non-theist and a non-atheist. Like, for example, a baby is simultaneously a non-theist and a non-atheist. Other than that, there is no default position.
That's true, but
name it whatever you want.
Strange. Yeah, exactly. Name it what you want.
That's just logically true.
You can name it whatever you want. I mean, it doesn't matter.
I'm not just naming it whatever I want, though. I'm just saying that's logically true.
Okay, I'm taking the position that says I don't think there's evidence sufficient to believe in this. You're saying there is. That means if we're going to continue along the typical debate style, you would have to put forth an argument to illustrate why you believe this, or if that's your point, is to win somebody over or win an argument, you'd have to put your argument forth.
But you seem to presume that it would be.
I think you're cutting out, maybe. Hello?
While
Can
he
you hear
fixes
anything?
that, Don, I just want you to know I wasn't attacking you, bro. I was kind of, if you were in front of me, I would have just been kind of smiling at you, going like, let's get a
No,
better explanation of this. But
right, and that's me being poisoned by G plus, because that's what it always comes down to. Is someone says, "All right, you argue for atheism, I'll argue for theism." No, that's not how it works. Two people don't argue their point. One person makes a positive claim, the other one basically sits there and see if your arguments holds water. That's all it
right,
comes down to.
right. I mean, if I can continue with an aside, if no one minds. I mean, my interest in this has been from a standpoint of kind of where this goes in the end. I mean, why do we have these conversations? I'm always, I mean, the two things I'm most interested in are arguments about evolution. Those are the things that I kind of watch these debates for. I really don't care about the atheism so much. I care much more about when people are bastardizing and getting evolution wrong, and other sciences, by the way. But evolution just is. I don't want to call it my baby. I'm not a PhD student, but it's what I'm mostly interested in.
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely where it goes, but technically it doesn't have to. For example, I could say I hold the default position of saying that, or I'm not holding a positive position. That's all I could say. That's all I would have to say. And then the other person could say, well, I'm holding the positive position. You don't need to know my name. You don't need to know my position. You don't need to know anything. If someone puts forward, this exists, or I believe this to be true, this is 100% true, and they're going to hold to that in a debate, you don't necessarily need to know if I'm a naturalist or anything else to make your point, to make your argument. You know what I mean?
Out there, my bad, man.
Right.
Just stupid connection issues all day. I lost my total train of thought.
No worries into it. Maybe I can spur you back to what you were talking about in a different way. Because I have a question for you.
What's up?
No. Look, I would fancy myself as a bit more respectful towards theists. I've run the
You
gamut.
definitely sound like you are, and I can appreciate that, man. You're very respectful and cordial.
Well, it just depends. I mean, if we were to have a more pointed discussion, as I was saying before, for example, talking about gay rights, for example, I would try not to get heated, certainly, but at the same time, I might have more definitive positions against what you might believe about that, and certainly about things like evolution, as I was explaining while you were gone. That's my interest. So, but anyway, in terms of just a belief, I mean, I don't think Christians are bad people by any stretch of the imagination.
I don't think atheists are bad people. I just think you just got to take it by a person basis and situation by situation basis.
Right. But just getting back to the fruit of what we're talking about here, okay? You're absolutely correct, okay? I think logically thinking about the way you're structuring these terms, but it becomes definitional, and that's kind of what John was getting at, right? It's however you're defining it, and you can define it to be all sorts of logically, deranged, twisted, or whatever. I mean, that's the thing about logic. And if you take formal logic classes, and it's been years since I've done that, you will learn to manipulate them. Okay, you can change them in certain ways and create equivalences, and then there's sometimes you screw that up and create a fallacy out of it. That's what the whole endeavor of discussion is for, okay? And that's why fallacies exist. So my point, though, is that instead of worrying so much about defining your way into who has a burden of proof, either accept the burden or don't. If you don't want the burden, remain vague. I just believe this, and I don't really want to talk about it. If you do want to talk about it, and I think this is what John was getting to me, to correct me if I'm wrong, John, but if you're going to have the conversation, then don't just have a half-assed response to it. Take the burden. Don't
I ain't
just
got no
say,
problem with accepting the burden. What I have a problem with is when people try to critique my position and then I argue and then I address their points and they think they have no burden when they're arguing against my position. That's what I have a problem with.
An agnostic atheistic position doesn't have a burden of proof.
But if you're going to,
I would agree definitionally. Yeah.
if I'm going to give my points to, substantiate my burden of proof, and you're just going to just simply, sort of negate them and think there's no burden of proof that you got to offer the counter arguments to whatever evidence I'm giving you, and that's dishonest.
Oh yeah, that's
Well,
different. That's different. If
we're trying to persuade you. Oh, sorry, I'm talking over you, John.
Oh, sorry. If you put forth an evidence, I can't just say no. I have to back that up with the reason why I say no. I say, oh well, you're not being imaginative enough. Here's why that doesn't work per evolution.
Right. And the problem I have with most atheists I come across is it's the fact that if a deist is attempting to substantiate their burden of proof, and they say, well, I'm not convinced, and just no, and then they just kind of just reserve themselves, not having to argue anything or really say anything. That's dishonest.
Yeah, I think you're being slightly proactive. We haven't even got to that point. I'm saying just off the start.
I'm saying the burden of
you haven't put an evidence forth to where I've shot it down. So off the start, you have the burden of proof. Now where we go from there could change, but I'm saying just at least in the beginning, it's anything you put forth is you're just gonna have to start with you making certain claims. You see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. I was just saying that in a lot of conversations I've had with atheists, that I would attempt to give my burden of proof as a theist, and then they'll just kind of shoot down claims in ad hoc fashion and think that they don't have to explain why they're shooting down the claims. You see what I'm saying?
That's the same thing with me, Antonio. When I try to ask, an atheist for why does this not exist, for some reason they turn it around and say the burden of proof is on me to do that. Even though I haven't made the claim. As soon as they make the claim, the negative claim, I ask them why. And most of them won't do that, but some of them are willing to do that.
Yep.
Emmanuel, can I just ask you a question then? I mean, if I were to re-answer your question, if you were to ask me that same question, okay, and instead of just saying, hey, you have the burden of proof, I were to be honest in my own mind, okay, and adopt a colloquial way of speaking, just an everyday way of speaking, right, and just say, I don't really care if your God exists. I don't think about it. Why should I think about it? It's the same question. It's just phrased different.
If I'm offering...
Could you explain it to me some more? I'm not sure I understand.
Sure. I mean, I'm just trying to make a different way of explaining the same thing. If in an argumentative structure, we're talking about logical fallacies, we're talking about burdens of proof and all of those other sorts of philosophical verbiage, or if you will, then we're going to use things like burden of proof, okay? But if we're just talking to people, everyday dudes on the street, like you are, by the way, a nice view of wherever you are, all the way from Australia where I am. Anyway, the point is, I would just ask you this: if you were my friend and we were sitting there having a polite conversation, I don't believe that. Excuse me, I wouldn't even say that. I just don't even care if your God exists. I don't think about gods at all. Okay, because my interest is in science class, or my interest is in whatever else I'm reading at the time. Okay.
You're a rare breed, sir, because a whole lot of people who claim, who say that God does not exist or believe that God does not exist, seem to care awfully a lot and are invested in it so much that they constantly argue against God as an absurd concept.
Specifically, specifically what Dennis was saying is he says he's not interested in it. Well, what if someone's extremely interested in the topic? They think it's really, someone has a specific belief. You think that's interesting. For example, some people think the Earth is flat, and there are people who spend hours on here who argue against those people. Just because they think it's interesting, it's stimulating. So just because that you're interested in it doesn't mean that. I just don't see the argument there at all. It comes down to your interest in what
I'm not making an argument. I'm not making an argument. What I'm doing is I'm addressing the situation. Okay, I'm addressing the burden of proof issue. If you're, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier before Emmanuel dropped on. Okay, if you're going to have a discussion about something, if you do care, okay, then you really, in my opinion, you should bring forth an argument to where you can have a positive claim, because otherwise you're just going to bicker about burdens of proof all day long. Okay, if it seems to me that if you're going to stand on a position of I don't have a burden to bear, then why are you talking? We don't do that in philosophy. In philosophy, you're adopting or you're addressing positions, and we don't log on to say, hey, here's my position, critique it. I don't think that a lot of people do that. I think if you're interested in doing that, you should take a philosophy course because you'll get that all day long. Okay, but if we're just having conversations with each other in hopes of enlightening one another in some degree or another, then I think you should. I would hold to this. I think you should adopt a position, and therefore accept some version of a burden of proof. Otherwise, it's just lazy.
Yeah, but we were speaking. Just real quick, we were speaking directly on form of the argument, so that's why it was I was holding to the burden of proof so adamantly, is because we weren't actually speaking towards any substance. We were speaking towards the form of the argument. So that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, from what I've understood so far, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think you, even if you don't want to admit it, you guys kind of agree. I mean, it really comes down to definitions, and John, you've said that, by the way. So,
well, I actually started off arguing my point the wrong way. It's absolutely true that beliefs do not require the burden of proof. So I'll have to amend, certain things I said earlier on that. I'll have to kind of retract a few statements from earlier, because I was kind of arguing, kind of on the presupposition or the assumption, so to speak, that when we talk about beliefs, in typical human interaction with these conversations, when we talk about beliefs, there usually is talking about the burden of proof, although technically a belief doesn't require the burden of proof. It's just that in typical human interaction with these conversations, when we talk about beliefs, we kind of associate that with burden of proof usually.
It's
kind of where I was coming from.
Just the distinction to belief and know. For example, do I know, or do I believe that my biological father is the guy who I think it is? Is his name Mark? Is that my biological dad? Yes, I believe that. Do I know that? Well, I've never really taken a paternity test. I look a lot alike him, but I've never taken the test. Although this is kind of really dragging to the technicalities, but there's a difference between belief and knowing. A better example would be probably your girlfriend cheating on you. I believe my girlfriend isn't cheating on me. Do I know? Well, I'm not around her 24/7, so I couldn't know that. So there's a distinction.
Right, or like if a bunch of people like a mile away from you said that they saw some UFO alien ship, you can believe what they're saying is true or false, but it's different than knowing what they're saying is true or false. You can't know either way because you weren't there.
Well, yeah, but that's more like a younger creation thing where they said, well, nobody knows unless it was written down, unless God would have told us. But the thing is, we can know.
You're breaking up, man. You're breaking up.
You hear me now?
I can hear you, but you're breaking up. There's some feedback going on.
Yeah, I caught over the reverb in your voice.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. This usually happens but you guys can still understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, you can go
Yeah.
ahead and try to make your point. We'll just kind of have to bear with it.
Well, you guys are talking about the burden of proof, and the burden of proof is on, the other side to prove such and such. And yeah, it's true. We can't 100% prove anything. I can't 100% prove that I'm talking to you right now, but we can build up a case around a certain claim, and that certain claim should have certain presumptions, certain premises. And if those premises are true, the probability of that claim being true starts to add up, and the possibility and the probability of that claim starts to make more mathematical or the probability of that claim being true becomes more true than false as we keep on gaining more evidence. So I would say it's up to both parties to prove or disprove whether there is a God or there isn't a God, and you should go with what is the most reasonable to believe, because everything is possible, but we got to believe what's reasonable. So when somebody says, I don't believe in God or I do believe in God, okay, what are your reasons for believing or not believing in God? Are they reasonable? Are they rational?
Yeah, I think it just depends if you're speaking colloquially or not. I mean, even if you're speaking in a direct formal debate, you would still put forth potential in your opening argument. You could put forth a case for the lack of evidence and try to support your worldview. But essentially, the other person's argument is going to be where a lot of the disagreements are going to come up. And if I disagree with one of the premises, I'm going to have to back that up with some type of evidence why that isn't the case. If it's some type of fallacy, or if it's appealing to ignorance, appealing to the unknown, things like that. But per se, I'm just saying technically, the one that's not holding the positive position doesn't necessarily have to put evidence forth off the start, but whenever you start disagreeing with certain premises, then you have to back up your premises with evidence.
Well,
I think that's a really well stated position.
What you're saying, it all comes down to who starts off with the positive claim and who doesn't. Because an atheist or a theist can start off with the positive claim.
Well, it would be intellectual suicide for an atheist to try to take the position that no gods exist 100% sure. So no one, I don't think
for anybody it would be.
Well, that's not true. A presuppositional apologist would say that they know 100% certain that God exists. So there's a whole theistic camp that says 100%.
Not all presuppositional theists would argue 100% certainty.
Well, most of them do, and the precepts of Christianity suck. Oh my gosh, they suck. Saitan Bruggenkate is a moron.
Bruggenkate? I sorry, if you weren't meaning that as a joke, I apologize. But yeah, I don't believe that's how his name's pronounced.
It's Bruggenkate. But yeah, he would definitely, most presuppositional apologists, they would definitely put forth that they 100% know. But if you go more to the evidential route, like Sproul's, even bigger, William Lane Craig, he wouldn't hold to 100%. He's more of a premises to the conclusion type guy.
Yeah, that's who I am. What I would define myself more as premises to the conclusion.
Do you like his Boltzmann brains argument?
I
was at that debate actually.
I haven't really looked at it fully, so there's a whole lot of stuff I got to study about it to really understand it. So I can't really speak on it.
Do we have any Calvinists in the room?
I can't either, to be honest.
I think I'm probably, besides Emmanuel, I think I'm you, Emmanuel, myself are the only theist in here. So, I mean, I don't know. I haven't adopted the position of Calvinism yet, but...
Thanks.
Hey,
I forgot. Yeah, you're in here too, Scorpio. My bad.
Hey, Dennis, I was looking in the side
I didn't
chat.
mean to forget you. You just kind of hidden in the back there.
I was looking in the side chat, and you would say, "Would you agree that there are necessary presuppositions at the base?" Yes, there definitely are axiomatic
Mm,
truths and axiomatic
right.
contingencies, but the presuppositional argument starts there with their axiom as encasing a whole heap of unfounded claims. Sure,
Right.
sure. Whenever you're doing a secularist epistemology, your axioms are going to be bare down to the basics. How to, some would
Right.
be consciousness, existence. Then contingent axioms would be more like induction, things like that. But those are the
I
bare. That's
no,
as
I
big.
agree. And to be honest with you, just to piggyback on what you're saying, I hope I'm not interrupting the tail end of that. By the way, I should shut up and let you finish.
Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say is we dig down to the deepest that our brains can go. Now, that's our axiom, but the precept will presuppose a whole it'll just ruin Occam's razor essentially.
Right, and to be honest with you, and this is a little bit of an aside, so I apologize, but I'll try and make it quick. I've not seen, and I really want to get into a proper conversation. It's difficult to do in Australia because there's a lot of atheists here, so everybody's just going to believe with me, believe alongside me. But what I want, there is a way to kind of argue, I think logically, intellectually about these axioms. As soon as you have identity, okay, as soon as you can get an identity, like something exists independent of another thing, it seems to me that you have the basics of mathematics. You at least have a binary system started, okay, and of course brains won't be in existence at that point to care. Okay, that happens with complexity millions and billions of years into the future. Okay, but if you can start off with just a couple things, then that is enough for a basis of some very, very basic epistemic kind of properties about the universe. And these are the kind of arguments that I'd like to actually have with a proper framing. But so I don't actually think that you even really have to presuppose. Um, but it's an open debate in my opinion. I think intellectually, in terms of arguing for logic and stuff like that, it's so complex by this point that we should just presuppose, because having to justify that is just astronomically impossible. Anyway.
Yeah, and another thing is it's have you heard the difference between like a necessary contingency and then or not sorry, a necessary axiom and a contingent axiom?
Yep. Hmm.
So like induction would be a contingent, but like I would be self-existence would
Right.
be necessary, because essentially necessary means that it's impossible for one to negate. So
Correct. Yeah.
obviously I can't even
Yeah. And that's what I was getting at with the identity thing, right? So
right.
if as long as you have an identity, you just exist, then I don't know whether that's worth arguing. I mean, and you're not presupposing it; it just is. And
Exactly.
I mean, to the theists, in a nod in that direction, if you could actually prove that the I exists, then you have something. Okay, and I think that's where a lot of, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, atheists, for using that because the reasons I gave earlier, I just think that's the problem that we, quote unquote, have, or I have, with that argument is that I can't put an I there. I have so many questions about what that is and where you get justifications for definitions and why you believe things in Bibles or Qurans or whatever holy text you want.
You're
Yeah.
saying
Anyway,
you're not justified in using I as an axiom?
not in the case of God.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Did he drop?
Yeah, probably had net problems like me. We'll see if he comes back in a sec. There he is.
Sorry about that, by the way. I didn't hear what you said because I accidentally hit my Rachel Maddow link and popped off.
So I don't know if you heard anything I said. I'll just slightly.
I didn't hear a single reply to what you said to
Okay,
me.
I think I didn't start yet. Okay, so whenever you're trying to, an atheist or non-theist or whatever is trying to lay out some of these axioms like I exist, the laws of logic, those would be necessity. And then you start laying out some other contingent ones. Well, I've seen the gripe from theists is that it's like, oh well, if you're just gonna make everything an axiom, then there's nothing I can do about it. Well, there is a way around that, as something you could say is you could just lump it all together, which I think that's not necessarily the right way to do it, but you could say I can make models about the reality I find myself in. Now that encompasses everything I said and kind of sneaks everything in a specific way.
Right, but we wouldn't be that wouldn't be. I don't know. We're talking about axioms, right? And maybe that's where I'm getting tripped up here. If you're arguing that we shouldn't be arguing in axioms about that, I totally agree. Because I don't think we live our lives axiomatically. I think axioms come in justifications, right? And usually axiom in that very specific term is used in mathematics. I mean, things that are very black and white. We don't really use axioms so much in philosophy, for example, because we're more interested with. We're mostly dealing with induction, by the way. We're not even dealing with deductive proofs. Most of it's inductive.
Yeah, I like the term axiom from at least the stuff that I've read. It just seems a little more technical than saying presuppositions. So I just kind of like using axioms a little more. I've seemed to read a lot of things about axiomatic necessities and axiomatic contingencies. You're saying that you don't see that very much?
Oh, not at all. I mean, it depends on the framing, right? I mean, we all are. You can have philosophy of mathematics, for example, and that would be very much in the line of talking about those things. But no, I mean, the term axiom I don't see pop up too much in philosophical discussions. But then again, I'm not a PhD student, right? So to take my limited interest, I guess, at heart, there, I have a BA in philosophy. But no, I mean, we're not presented with that in for undergrad, for example, so much. Yes, of course, I've heard axiom come up, and I don't have a problem with it. I'm not really arguing against it. It's just that when it comes down to, let me just dispense with that. When we engage in philosophy in the real world, put that in air quotes, okay? For example, when we're doing work, all right? I'm in the bio lab, for example. I'm not interested in axioms. I don't necessarily take it as fact that evolution exists, okay? I have a model in my mind, and that's what you were saying, John. I hope correct me if I'm getting your argument wrong here at all. But we have models, okay, and we're always working off of a model, and no one's ever really questioning the philosophical underpinnings of those models. We're just doing work. Now, it might come to a point where somebody questions something, and then you have to get philosophical about it. So you step outside of that and you start to critique different elements of something, and you might have to justify something, for example, in a discussion section of a paper. Okay? And then when we jump into philosophy, we have other justifications depending on the audience, depending on the person we're arguing against. Okay? So if that's the case, I mean, that's where the nuts and bolts of the I guess of the value of the discussion is. And that's where I'm interested, right? But in terms of these presuppositions that people have, I mean, you're getting really technical, and when you start arguing for presuppositions and axioms, I would kind of equate those two. That might be an error, but those should be in a philosophy class or between really technical people. I mean, otherwise we're just kind of paying lip service to it. I don't know if that answered it.
Well, it just matters what form you're in, and if someone's going to talk, especially whenever you talk to presuppositionalists, that's what it boils down to. They're essentially asking, what is the foundation? Instead of axiom, you could just say foundation. What are you working out of to build your knowledge, to build what's your basic epistemology essentially. So whenever you're in that type of conversation, you kind of have to go there. But if you're, for example, doing a thesis defense over some type of geological formation, you don't start by saying, well, my contingent axiom is that uniformitarianism holds.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So
that's exactly.
It just matters on forum, and especially when you're in something like this. You just talked about, like, I was just speaking directly towards your presupposition epistemology comment over there. So
no, and that's great. It is an open question to me, and like I said, it's one of those kind of things that I think about every once in a while when. I really don't want to engage with these people, I'm going to say, but I watch G-Man an awful lot, and I'm going to admit I do my fair share of face palming. I don't really think his style is something I'd want to engage, but there are times where I want to go, G-Man, just stop for a second and realize that you're off on a deep end that you have no justification for being in. I don't know how I randomly brought him in, by the way, but anyway.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of on a slightly higher level. There are some problems inherent in the sciences. Say geology. Whenever you're doing subsurface geology work, there's a lot of assumptions that you have to end up making, and it's not a relative problem. It's not a problem per person per se. It's the science in general, where our knowledge, between two wells, what's going on between. Well, you kind of have to extrapolate. So it's funny whenever people bicker about the problem with the science in general, opposed to a relative problem that you have. That seems like whenever you're giving a talk and someone pipes up about a general problem within the field of geology opposed to a problem that you are having relatively, that seems to come up sometimes, and it's kind of annoying.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I mean, academia is like that, right? And to some degree, I don't know whether you'd agree with me or not, but perhaps you would. That's necessary. It's annoying, but necessary, and that's what makes the endeavor so fruitful and useful.
Yeah, and I mean, those specific questions are the very reasons that PhD programs exist. I mean, you're shaping, you're reworking the old axioms, you could say, and you're creating new ones. So that's the whole point.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Antonio, you were going to say something, bro, and we kind of hijacked your conversation, so I apologize. Or at least I did, maybe.
It's all good, man. It doesn't really matter to me at this point because I'm about to end the hangout anyway. Well, I appreciate you gentlemen coming by and having this fruitful discussion.
Hey,
Enjoyed it.
Dennis, you want to do a hangout?
I have to go in 45 minutes for a little while. I have a get together with some friends but yeah, it's only 7:45 a.m. for me, and I will be around for a while. Yeah, to be I don't mind going into a different hangout. This is the first hangout I've ever been in. I will say that. Like I said, actually, can I ask a question real quick, John? I will follow you into another hangout. Let's dispense with that. But I wanted to ask Antonio a question.
What's up, man?
Because this is my first hangout, and I have seen you pop up in G-Man's hangouts. Okay, do you mind a G-Man question?
Sure.
Okay. Would you say that you pay attention to him at all? I mean, on a regular basis, or is that disingenuous?
I don't agree with everything he says, but I think where I seem to fight with him is his passion for his drive to preach the gospel, and that's where I stand foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder with him.
Right, right. No, no, and I think that's fair, and I think I'm very. I'm interested to hear what he has to say about that stuff. But when he starts delving into the Bible, I kind of my eyes glaze over, if you will. I hope that's not too mean to say. My question is this: Does he have some form of? He seems to think he has a lot of weight and a lot of pull, and it seems to me that he doesn't. And I kind of wanted to get an opinion for somebody that has been in his hangouts and engaged him on some level.
Well, I think it'd be better for you to ask him himself
No,
than me.
see, that's fair. That's entirely fair. I've just been a chicken. I don't want to have it out with him, but it seems colossally arrogant of him. And maybe someday I'll jump into the hangout, but I'm gonna have to put up with the inevitable. Turn your camera on. I don't have a cam. So it's like, I don't know. I'm just a nobody. I just want to ask you a question, politely.
Yeah, but yeah, just I mean, he'll hear you out, okay? He'll he can definitely get very very passionate. You know, no one can deny he gets passionate, but I do think he has a genuine interest in hearing people out. So just ask him one day, and if it goes down south in your opinion, then it is what it is. But it may go a different way than what you expect. You never know,
No,
man.
it's true. It's true. No, and I think he does put on a bit of a show. He likes to use those wrestling analogies and kind of act like a heel sometimes. But I don't know. He's a fun guy.
Yeah, I'm about to end this hangout, but thanks for coming by, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah,
No worries,
Tony.
What's up?
Yeah, Veko's doing Christian only hangout at 9. It's gonna be about rebuking.
I'll be there. Will you be there?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that just were you just asking me if I was gonna be there?
No, I was just letting you know so that if you want to go, you can go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for letting me know that, man. I'll be there.
Bye, dude.
You guys, really quick. John said he was going to make a hangout. How do I find out what his hangout is?
Well, did you add him on G Plus?
No, I don't think so. Unless you tried to add me. I don't even know how to do that.
Well,
you have to do it through Google Plus. I know how to do that, I guess.
well,
He has to be in my circle.
are you on the phone or laptop, computer, or what?
I'm on my computer. I'm on my PC.
Okay, here's what I'll do for you. I'll post his profile here,
Oh, okay.
and then
I could just go through.
I can walk you through that. Let's see.
Oh, okay. If you can give me his profile and just kind of nudge me in that direction, it would save me time. I just, if I look at it now, it's going to take me 20 minutes or 15 minutes to puzzle through all that stuff.
Right.
You know,
Well, hold on, let me see. Let me find his profile real quick here. Let's see. John. Let me look him up on G Plus.
yeah, John Doe is the name, I guess.
Yeah, let's say John.
And Antonio, by the way, I just want to say that I appreciate your candor. I think you are. A
Oh,
nice
I
guy.
appreciate that, man. So are you, man. I try to be, man. Like most people, I can get very, very passionate about these topics, but I generally do try to be as respectful as possible and try to, be reserved as much as possible as well.
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah, there's just a profile right there. You can I'll screen share real quick so you can see what I'm doing, and I'll show you how to add them.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
It's doing the mirror reflect. No, yeah, I got it now. Yep, I can see it.
Okay, I'm about to go over here to where his profile is. What you want to do is you want to go to this little thing right here.
Right.
There's a circles. You can
Oh, I can
do
add it
friends,
there.
family, acquaintances. Yes, and just
Okay.
mark of if you want to add him as a friend, mark friend. If you want to follow him, mark that. But either way, you're following him.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how
Well,
you
and there you go,
can.
and then you can just go hang out,
Yeah.
and I can send him a message. Beautiful. Okay,
Yep.
that was not hard at all. Thank you, my friend. That's all I needed.
No problem, man.
I hope whatever you're going to do with the rest of your day is a fun and worthy endeavor.
Same to you, man, and welcome to the G Plus community, man, and hope to have more conversations with you in the future.
Thanks, bro. Absolutely, yeah. I might. I am interested. I do. I mean, I'm an undergrad student in zoology, and I have a very passionate view of evolution.
Yeah,
And,
you definitely sound very educated. I will say that. I can appreciate that.
Probably too educated at some point. I don't have a PhD, but anyway, I don't try and talk about things that I don't know or can't justify my position on. But
I'm the
anyway.
same way, man. Yep.
All right. Well, brother, be well, and God bless for what it's worth.
I appreciate that, man, and have a good one.
Absolutely.
As a respect to your atheist views, I'm not going to say God bless to you, but
no. I just hope you don't take that as dismissive.
No, absolutely not. I appreciate that you're respecting my beliefs, but have a good day, man.
Take care, brother. Okay, bye.
All right. Thanks for coming by, Scorpio. I know you didn't really say much of anything, but I still always appreciate you dropping by. And
yeah, well, I just wanted to hear what was going on in the room, and see what the topic was for the day. So
yeah, I gotta get ready to head for Bible study, but man, just thanks for coming by, man. And
okay, well, maybe we'll see you on later on somebody's hangout. So
yeah, probably Vecko's hangout later tonight on. He was talking about Christians and things like that, and he's gonna have a hangout later tonight.
Yeah, because there's been so much going on about the all these different Christian factions, arguing and rebuking each other for this and that.
Yeah, it's been gotten out of hand. It's ridiculous, man, and we need to deal with it seriously. We do.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of not presenting a unified front, whereas the atheists can just turn around and oh well, we all just don't believe. So
exactly.
Right? I was trying to add some jokes into the side there.
Yeah, I was laughing the entire time. I mean, you didn't really hear me when I had my mic muted, but I thought they were hilarious.
Yeah, I'll just trying to break up
your input to the discussion. Yeah, I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, it gets a little bit too emotionally raw with at least it wasn't in this one, but it is a thing in some of the other hangouts.
Absolutely, I try to keep that raw stuff out of my hangouts. I don't want that mess in here, but I might see you later on tonight, man.
Okie dokie. You have a good what's left of the day.
Same to you, brother.